What's happening? This is Djordje, your friendly neighborhood bullfiddle cat. And today I'm not in the Slapsville. I'm actually in Croatia. And that's the reason why I don't have my bass with me. But we have here Mark Rubin, which is more important. He's going to join us here for a second. And I don't have my regular setup here. So I would really appreciate if you guys say, if you guys tell me, like, if you hear me, if you don't hear me. I already see there's some people logged in, so that's great. Thank you for being on time. I try to make this interesting from the very beginning, so that it's pleasant for you as it's pleasant for me. But in to be honest, I'm doing this for me because I love talking to all these people. I love learning from all of them because there's always stuff like to learn, and all these guys are top notch. I'm honored to call most of them friends. And Mark Rubin. Mark Rubin has very special place in my heart. I met him. I believe it was 2003 or something like that. But I heard about him a couple years before that because, as you probably know by now, I've been researching sled bass and anything upright bass related. Being all right. Thank you, guys. I'm glad you hear me and see me. It's gonna get dark soon. So as I mentioned, I'm in Croatia, so I might have to turn on some lights. But it's more important that you see and hear Mark than me. Um, so I heard about Mark a few years before I met him. It might be 99 or 2000, something like that. And while I was researching slab bass, as I mentioned, and I found out the article that he wrote for a bass player magazine, and he was interviewed by Greg Allwell, and the interview was great. And the most interesting thing for me was that he wrote the essential slap bass songs or riffs or something like that. And to be honest, now I look like super knowledgeable and everything, like probably for most of you. But like that article, those licks really got me started. I was like, all right, who's this guy? Who is I haven't heard about like so many people from that list. He mentioned some guys that I would not mention, but some people, because I don't think they were essential, but like some of those people that he mentioned were really essential, and I never heard about it. Like Shug Fisher, for example. I can when Mark join us, I have to thank him for that article. If you guys are not familiar with it, you should check it out. You should check it out. It's great. One day I might do my own essential sled based songs. I'll probably do it in a video since I'm getting kind of kick out of that. And but that article really got me started. He mentioned Chuck Fisher, he mentioned Tom Gray, he mentioned like so many cool people. And I researched Mark, I researched all these guys. Back then in Serbia, as you probably know by now, because I mentioned that quite a few times, there were sanctions, so you couldn't buy CDs, you couldn't buy, it was kind of almost pre-internet, and you couldn't really, definitely couldn't download anything. So I found a way to get some CDs and some original music through one truck driver who was driving from Serbia to Sweden, and he was a smuggler. So he was smuggling all kinds of stuff, and I convinced him to smuggle some CDs, and that was like really weird because he had a friend um, who was a member of a library over there, and they had like a huge, crazy library of CDs of music, and I was really impressed by that. And I convinced him, hey, can you just, I'll pay you like whatever cost is like that you buy that CD at a store, but you just burn me because I really wanted to hear that music. And that's how I found out about most of those guys. And then that was kind of the beginning of my crazy slab based research. And um, and then, but Mark CDs. I didn't have to go to through the truck driver, smuggler truck driver. I was able to find those CDs on a black market in Serbia, in Belgrade, in a student cultural center. And I bought all of his CDs, bootlegs. They were burned, but I paid legit price for it. And I remember that I was really, really, really loved Bad Livers, and I was this is one of the coolest. I always loved bluegrass, but the Bad Livers were special. They had some edge. They had some punk to it. And besides Mark, there was Danny Barnes who was playing banjo, who's also a genius for, especially for bluegrass music and for that kind of more experimental, um, inventive style. And I was just stoked. I loved Bad Livers from the first note. I remember a few songs. Mark will remind me, but I remember that Brand New Hat was one that I really liked. There was a one unnamed song, like a bonus track or something on one of the CDs, and there was Interplanetary Music. I really love that one. I still have that. Interplanetary, interplanetary music. I have that in my head always. And Um, so I want to cut this intro short, but like I have like so many things I want to tell you about Mark Rubin. And then I found out that he released an instructional video. It was VHS. I was like, I was pretty good bass player at that time, but I really have to get this because I have to lay my hands on anything that is slap bass related. And it was like, okay, around the same time I heard about Lee Rocker's instructional video and Mark's and Kevin's. And I might have said this story in the Kevin's episode, but the way how I got Mark's video, the ungentle art. I'm not sure if it's still available, but if it is, you should get it. Um, so I had to convince boyfriend of my ex girlfriend at that time, who was an American guy, so like to order it, and like so he got it. And when he came like to visit her, and like, he brought it. She asked me, "Isn't this a little weird?" I'm like, I don't care. I just want to get this. I just want to get this freaking VHS. So I got it, and so one more Mark story before I introduce him. He's already there, waiting. Um, Hopefully, he's not having a mask through the whole this time. Uh, um, but like I freaked out about a guy. I loved him, and there was I have to meet him somehow. But Serbia was under sanctions. I was not traveling, no tours, like not really like I mean a little bit of emails and internet, all of that stuff, but not it was not very well developed at that time, at least in my world. um, and at that time I was playing lots of Romani or gypsy music, and I was featured in one CD that was called Serbia Sounds Global, I believe volume 2, with my band. And when the promoter of the CD, he gave me a CD since I was on it, and I opened it, and like first photo on the CD booklet was Mark Rubin. I was like, what is this guy doing? That I want to hang out. I want this guy to be my best friend. So I was like, how's this possible? And then that guy was kind of like, oh yeah, he's just part of this band, whatever. So, but that turned out like to be a really cool band that they combined klezmer music and Serbian Romani music, Gucha style, which kind of like they did it. They might have even the first one that did it. That they blended that style, made a little bit of a fusion, and it was great. I really liked it. I always preferred Bad Livers over anything else that he did. And Santiago Jimenez, um, Don Santiago Jimenez conjunto style that he did. That's very unique, very special. And I got that CD. Few months later, they were doing a concert, like, and then at that concert, they brought that band, and the opening band was some Romanian Romani band. I'll probably mention Romani music in this interview quite a few times, and I prefer to use that term. But if you're not familiar, it's basically gypsy music, but you should still call it Romani because that's a proper way to call it. And with another amazing slap bass player, his name was Dobrica Florin, and you should look him up as well. He was the bass player for the band Fulgerica or Fulgerica. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but if anyone is interested, I can write it down on the comments. Um, and I heard about a show. I came there like 5 hours before, waited, and Mark showed up, and we became best friends. So without further ado, I want to introduce Mark Rubin. Hello.
George, don't stop. Don't
All
stop.
right.
Don't stop. Well, welcome to New Orleans, huh? So I hope
Yeah.
I'm glad you're keeping safe there in Croatia. What you didn't
Yep.
tell them was that you plied me with a home-cooked meal. That
Oh
you
yeah.
took me to your home, and your mother made me plesavica and shotska salad,
Oh wow.
and we
You
had
have a good
rahini.
memory.
Oh, who could forget? Who could forget? I mean, come on. I
Yeah.
forget. I forget all sorts of details, but meat? No, no, I don't forget. I don't forget a home cooked meal. And
Oh
and
man.
from someone who's so nice and as knowledgeable as you, and I can't tell you how completely charmed and honored I am to be on the list of people that you're talking to. I've just got to tell you.
Oh, thanks so
Thank you
much.
so much for
Of
involving
course.
me in this.
Of course.
Really great.
That time when we met, it was really special. I remember that
You
I
also didn't
brought.
tell. You also didn't tell them I was playing tuba.
Oh, you were playing tuba. Hey, I was bummed. Like, I have to see this guy playing slap. And then you came to my place, and then we were slapping my basses
Mm-hmm.
and ate that good meal. And then we went to one of the clubs. I remember that we went to, I forgot what was the name of the place.
Well, you took me on the town,
Primich or
man.
something.
Took me on the town. I got to see Belgrade. Oh man, I can't wait to come back. Can't wait to come
Oh,
back.
oh, me too. Hopefully,
Yeah, right.
this, I was about to go like next week, but like all this crap that is happening over
Life
there,
gets
I'm
in the
like,
way,
oh,
huh? Life gets in the way.
well, I'm kind of getting used to it. Not to life, but like the things that get on my way.
Well, we're all doing the
But
best we can, man. And
yeah,
we have this format we can communicate. So,
of course, this is intimacy now. Now we're in each other's houses. This is as close as it gets.
please welcome to my place.
If you guys don't know, Mark Rubin, as I had like a little introduction, but his music will be the best introduction for his work. Um, he used to live in Austin for a very, very long time, and then was one of the main bass players, definitely main slap bass players in Austin, like Kevin and him, like from the early '90s, right?
Yeah, that was pretty much it. I had lived up in. I'm originally from Oklahoma, and then
Stillwater.
I lived in Stillwater, and then
Oh, okay.
my family moved to Norman,
Oh,
and
okay.
these are college towns. And in Norman, after I got out of high school, I stopped. I didn't go to college. I actually got a job playing electric bass in a reggae band, if you can believe it or not. And I made so much money in that reggae band, I didn't go to college,
Oh, wow.
which really made I was making more money than my family at the time. And
Wow.
so I didn't see any really, and I was also really involved in punk rock music. Um, so I worked with promoters at the time. There's a band called the Flaming Lips. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but
Yes.
I used to help those guys out, run sound, and kind of roadie for them originally. And so I got to know the punk rock scene and be kind of on that circuit. And so when you talk about Bad Livers having kind of a punk edge, that's kind of where that came from. When the work kind of dried up in Oklahoma, I moved to Dallas, and it was there I kind of got exposed to the country western scene because there was good money playing in honky tonks there. And growing up in Oklahoma, I was exposed to that music already. I kind of didn't like it, to be quite frank with you.
Oh, wow.
Well, I mean, the people that listened to it in the '70s were kind of super conservative, and they kind of would beat up punk rockers, if you know what I mean. So
Yep.
it was kind of a weird deal. But what really attracted me, what I really liked, was the bluegrass music that I heard when I was a kid, and then when I kind of fell into these bluegrass jams, and I remember being real interested in bluegrass music, and there was this band called Killbilly that I saw that was kind of one of the first bands that kind of mixed that punk rock energy onto acoustic instruments. And
were they any was there anything rockabilly about it, Ben? Is that the
yeah,
reason why they called Billy or?
well, they were trying to find a name that was like a hook, and um, they were trying to shoot for the underground. You know what I mean? Like the roots rock scene. This is about the same time that bands like the Blasters were coming around, and you couldn't really call those guys necessarily a rockabilly band. They were like kind of a roots rock band, and there was a healthy blues circuit that came through. Bands like Anson and the Rockets, and really there were a lot of really great bands touring. I'm trying to remember the band that Thomas Yearsley's the bassist for.
Paladins?
Yeah, Paladins, for instance, were coming through town. I wouldn't really call those guys a rockabilly band per se.
Kind of like a rhythm and blues type of thing.
Rock and roll, like really great rock.
Yeah.
So the guys who started this band kind of had a vision of having a bluegrass band with a drummer and like really high power, really high power. And I was really attracted to that, but they had an electric bassist. But I had heard this when I was in Oklahoma. I'd heard these records like Smokestack Lightning and Willie Dixon records, and the sound of that, whatever that was, that sound had I was so attracted to that. And all the old men used to say, well, son, that's an upright bass. You know what I mean? You can try and get that sound on electric bass all day long, but you're never going to be able to do it. You're going to have to find you an upright bass. Well, golly, man, an upright bass was super expensive. It was, $10,000 or something. And I didn't know you could get plywood basses, and they were hard to find. So I thought that would be out of my reach. It wasn't until I was going through the classified ads that I used to kind of look in, and I saw that somebody was selling a Marshall full stack, right? They were selling a Marshall full stack and a 6-foot bass, right?
That's what the ad said.
Yeah, it said Marshall full stack, 6-foot bass, $75. So I got a friend. I didn't even know the car at the time. I got a friend to drive me out to Arlington, Texas, to go, and we pretended like we were looking for the Marshall, right? We're like, yeah, this might be good in our metal band. Yeah, I think so. And we just pretended. And we were like, hey, tell me about that 6-foot bass you got there. And they pulled out a fully carved CF Guts bass, man, like a beautiful carved bass, and that had surely been stole from a school system. And I said, hey, would you take $50 for that? And they said, sure. And boom, all of a sudden I had an upright bass. And so 2 days later, I'm playing in Killbilly.
Oh wow, okay.
So
and so just like to get a sense of time, what year is that approximately?
This is like 1985, 1986, and you got to understand. You got to understand, back then we didn't have amplification. There weren't pickups. The only pickup that was out there was a Barkus Berry, and it sounded like crud. And
but they were Underwoods, right? At that time?
Underwood had just come out. But the preamps. I mean, like, I ended up just doing what the Bluegrass guys did, and taking SM58 and wrap it in foam, and then put that with an adapter into a bass amp. You know what I mean? And then just pray. You know what I mean? Okay. Pray the band would be quiet. And it wasn't. It never really worked out. And what ended up happening too was there wasn't great string selection, and strings were like $350 a set. You couldn't get discount strings, so you'd end up getting orchestral gauge strings, and then you try and slap on them or what you thought was slap. You'd hear it on records, and you would beat your hand on there, and then you would eventually just damage your hand. And I had seen fleeting images. This is before YouTube or access to anything. You would just
That's
hear
80, 85, 86, right? That what you said?
Yeah, 85, 86. All you had was you would run into some old bluegrasser, or you would run into some old guy who played with Bob Wills. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I was very blessed. I'm 53, going to be 54. I was really lucky to live up in North Texas and play in these bands, these honky-tonk bands and these Western swing bands, and be in Killbilly that played at those same venues every now and again, to where I literally ran into guys who played in the Bob Wills bands. They played in those bands, and they would tell you what it was like. You know what I mean? They would give you like, well, we didn't have amplification, and well, what did you do? He goes, well, you just had to play. You just put your action up high and play real loud, and hope the band played quietly. And I go, well, that would wear you. I go, that would wear you out. And they go, well, yeah, we had 2 bass players.
Wow.
Oh, really? I said, yeah. For a dance, one guy couldn't handle it, so both singers played bass. Little unknown things like that you learn. And I was really lucky to be exposed to that kind of information, but it didn't do me any good because I'm playing with this loud ass band. And what ended up happening was I ended up developing. I learned how to tape my fingers, and I must be honest with you. I got so excited about doing this slap thing with you last night. I was working on my technique, and it's been 4 months since I've touched the bass, and I got super excited, and I got a blister. So so I went and I followed.
Taped it.
I taped my finger up, so I'll be in
Yeah,
good shape.
you were talking about taping on your video.
Yeah, it's super.
That video came out in 95 or so.
Yeah, it came out about a decade later. Came out about a decade later. But what I want to tell people is that I really did develop bad technique at that point. I kept my hand kind of open, and I hit the fingerboard way too hard. It's something that I still find myself doing. And you're a young man, and you get real, like you're like, ah! And the other thing is that I tensed up a little bit, and there's actually a video of me. I think I actually put it on my YouTube. There's actually a concert that Killbilly did in 1987, like a whole hour-long concert. And you can see me back there, and I'm just beating on it. But I have a magnetic pickup, so it's not even really coming through. So that's the one thing I want to tell people that I definitely don't want people to be careful about learning bad technique, because what ended up happening is that all the ligaments in my hands, you've got like a casing of ligaments that do all that. And by stressing it like that and not being natural, not keeping the hand natural, by stressing it, I ended up developing some real difficult problems later in life. And so I don't know if you folks can hear this, but you hear that?
Yes.
Yeah. That doesn't go away. And you don't really want that to happen later in life. And so that gives me a little bit of grief now when I do the technique. So that's something I definitely want to share with folks, to not play through pain and to not overdo your technique, especially when you're doing the slap-based technique. It's something I always tell my students.
I like that you guys mentioned, you and Kevin mentioned that about slap. It's kind of like in the instructional video. It's kind of like having a knife, but you never use it, kind of that type of thing. It could be like very damaging, but you don't do it all the time. And then it's Kevin is great about it. He always puts it in a specific spot, like as a part of the arrangement, and then it sounds very powerful, because it's kind of like something that you have to, if you learn that song, you have to repeat it, and you have to use it.
Well, let me play a little bluegrass to show you what the standard bluegrass. This is actually a band, a straight ahead bluegrass band that I had with Danny Barnes and a fiddler named Eric Hokanen. So this is we had a little band that played just straight bluegrass music, and this is kind of an example of what the bluegrass approach with kind of like the slap style that I learned from the old men, which was a different kind of a style. So, whoa, that ain't it. That ain't the one. Here we go. Come on. Technology's letting me down. It's light. Now, when they're singing, don't do it. I want to get away from the vocal. Because you're singing too. If I could, I surely would. There you go. Get the drive. Then you gotta bring it down. Gotta get the idea. So
I found that like that to be kind of common thing, like that bass players like for the singing always play kind of like a little bit more quiet, and they like always pizzicato, and then when I play bluegrass, I usually like to use slap for banjo. Like when banjo plays, then it's
banjo.
We can yeah.
See the banjo by the nature of the 3-finger roll, right? The first finger is almost ahead of the beat ever so slightly, right? So it leaves room for the smack, right?
Oh,
that's what I figured out, because if you realize that's a 3-piece band right there, okay? But you can make it sound a lot bigger if you've got that boom chick boom chick boom chick boom chick boom chick boom, right? And if you go boom ticka boom ticka boom ticka boom ticka boom ticka boom ticka boom, while the banjo's happening, it just sounds like a huge machine. But
it's when like banjo and slap, it's just starting with Flat and Scruggs and who's the bass player? Jake Tulloch.
Yep.
It's just amazing. It doesn't get any better than that. I want to mention, like, if you guys have, like, the listeners, all of you, if you have any questions, please do. We read these, and we will be featuring these questions and answering.
Absolutely. Now,
exactly.
you mentioned
this is your unique opportunity.
Yeah, come and get me. Now, you mentioned that Kevin and I were pretty much the only bass players happening when we were in town. And when I got to town, I guess I moved to Austin on August 28th, 1989, 7:55 p.m.
Wow,
I remember it very well. Because I left Kill Billy under not the happiest circumstances. They continued on and they did real well. And I've been in good communication with those guys since. Time wounds all heals, as we like to say. And when I got to Austin, I was told, Danny Barnes told me, come on down to Austin. We don't have a lot of upright bass players. There's a lot of work for upright bass players. And when I got there, I ran into the cats who were in the rockabilly scene and kind of the R&B scene. And the kings of that scene were High Noon. And High Noon had kind of just moved there at the same kind of time. And there were, they had moved there from Colorado. And there was some other cats who moved there from Colorado. They had a band called 47 Indians. And there was kind of a bubbling scene of people all the same kind of age who had similar ideas and similar techniques. And I don't recall how it went down. I do, but we're not going to share that story. But Kevin ended up needing a place to stay. And I said, hey, man, I'm going out with bad livers. And we're going to be gone for weeks. Why don't you just stay at my place? Why don't you move your stuff into my place? And it was a 1-room efficiency. I'm not making this up. 1-room efficiency. And I mean, it wasn't even 500 square feet. I mean, it was tiny. And I said, I'm not going to be back for 6 weeks, so you just have the run of the place. And he said, that's great, because when you're coming back, I'll be out on the road with High Noon. So
cool.
For something like nearly a year, there was only like a week or two that he and I were at the same place at this one room efficiency. And this is a true story. I found a house not far from the efficiency that was for rent. And I went and looked at it. It was a 2-bedroom house. And I went and looked at it, and it was cheap. And I said, hey, man, you want to move into this house? Like, we're both bass players. It'll be fun. And he goes, yeah, sure. And so as I was leaving on tour, I signed the lease on the house and left for tour. And then when he got back in town off the road, he moved our stuff into the new house. And then he went on the road, and then I came back in. It was insane. And as it turned out, we lived together at that house for nearly 13 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You guys were roommates for 13 years?
It was over a decade.
Wow.
It was over a decade. Now, this is a time when there were only two well-known upright bass players working in Austin, Texas, period. And neither one of them slapped. And they were the nicest guys. And they got all the studio work, and they got all the first calls. But if you just played upright bass, period, you could go to work. And in the first year that I moved there, I played with 33 different bands.
Wow.
33 different bands because I was doing my taxes. So you could get a lot of work. And this is long before Bad Livers formed. And Danny Barnes would hire me to do gigs as well. And we didn't have a band together at that point. And I remember, this is back when we didn't have cell phones. You just had a phone. And I remember we had this calendar, and we had this phone, right? And people would call and go, are you available to play on so-and-so a date? And I would go, no, but Kevin's schedule's open. You know what I mean? And I'd pencil in a date. And when I saw Kevin, I'd go, hey.
I got your gig.
Yeah, hey, man, so-and-so needs a bass player on that date. You think you can make it?
That's awesome. It's kind of like a weird, like crazy to think about it, because now Austin is kind of the slap bass town. Like there's like everybody who plays bass almost plays slap, and then have like so many amazing slap bass players coming from Austin.
Well, and think about it. We
crazy.
were right on top of each other. So if he learned something, he'd show it to me. If I learned something, I'd show it to him.
No, yeah, yeah.
And we would be listening. He would go, listen to this record, man. Check this playing out. You know what I mean? And like, I'd go, hey. Like he found some of the stuff that I put on that essential list, he found. You know what I mean? Or we can't remember who found. You know what I mean? Like, because we were in a constant state of learning. So that's why we did the video together, because the video was a culmination of our research that we had put together, if that makes sense. That
of course,
we together had learned and were teaching each other, because there was no one else. I mean, we would hassle old men, but by the time we had met them, they were in their 70s and 80s. And they would be playing like this. You know what I mean?
Okay.
They could barely, like, some of my mentors, like the cats like Jerry Lightsey, for instance, or Skinny Don Keeling. I think there's Jerry Lightsey right there. He's being inducted into the Western Swing Hall of Fame. He was the guy that I would meet at Bluegrass jams in Austin, Texas. And his business card said Jerry Lightsey, bassist and all-around nut. He was a wonderful fella, and he had one of those. You remember those DeArmond bass pickups, the kind that set on the top of the bass, came out in the 40s. He had one of those, and what was fascinating about Jerry is he taught me that the upright bass players in Texas tuned their basses differently than bass players. It was actually Don Keeling who taught me this. And one time I sat in on a bluegrass jam and I played Jerry's bass and I got completely lost. And I'm going, what the heck is going on here? Why can't I play this bass? And then at the end of the jam, he pulls me aside and he goes, oh, son, that we have that in the Texas tuning. And I go, what's the Texas tuning? What the heck are you talking about? And he explained to me that all of the Western swing and country and bluegrass bass players in Texas tuned their basses A, D, G, C. And that the C string was a red weed whacker wire that they got down at the hardware store. So I know now there's this big trend amongst the slap bass players to use weed whacker wires. Well, they're just following in a tradition that these old country guys had been doing for years and years and years. Now, why might you ask? They go A, D, G, C. Well, the fact of the matter is that on the bandstand, nobody can hear the E. It's lost. Nobody can hear those frequencies. Like I mentioned before, nobody can hear anything on stage. So that low E rumble gets totally lost. And in Western swing and also in bluegrass bass playing, there's a lot of walking. There's a lot of walking up the neck. So if you've got a C string there, then you don't have to go up the neck so much. And I remember Jerry told me, he goes, yeah, everybody wanted to get one of those K Chubby Jacksons. Everybody wanted one of those K 5 strings, but well, what the heck? It's a poor man's Chubby Jackson. Just tune it A, D, G, C. And I never did that to any of my 4-string basses, but it sure did lead to the bass that I play now, which we can talk about later. But that was a little bit of Texas bass history that I've never encountered before. And it was Jerry that turned me on to that. Jerry also was the first guy to actually show me kind of how he would get the pad of his finger. He's the first guy to kind of show me how he would get the pad of his finger. Let's get that in there and hook that under the string to get it up. He was kind of the first one, and he also kind of tried to get me to not put my hand out like that. He said to kind of keep it natural. So I kind of owe a little bit to Jerry. And that's Skinny Don Keeling, man, and he was a major influence on me as well. He and Jerry were running buddies, and he played with Don Walzer in the Pure Texas Band, and he had a very unique way of playing the upright bass, and I've never used his plucking style, but I'll show you here. He would take one finger, and he's doing it on the electric bass there. It's hard to tell, but he'd take this finger and he'd take that finger and he'd pluck like that, so he had more power. But he didn't. It was an amazing cat. But both of those guys taught me about the Texas tuning, and they were real. It's really wonderful when you get validation from guys who are about as old as your grandfather. And, for instance, both of those guys they backed up Bob Wills, Hank Thompson, George Jones, you name it, Webb Pierce, Lefty Frizzell. Back in the old days, those country singers didn't tour with a band. What they do is they would pick up a regional band and take them through. And both of those guys played with those regional bands. So,
were both of them using the same Texas tuning?
Yeah, that was when they played upright bass. That's what it was, upright bass. Maybe it was just this Central Texas thing, but that's what they did. And if you listen to Western swing recordings and you hear all of those runs, that they're not going up. You're not going to hear a low G. You're not going to hear someone coming down on a low G, and you're not going to hear a low E or a low F. The choice is because of the volume issue, and what timbre can be heard on stage. They never hit that E string. They never used it.
So
I don't either.
could you just please repeat what was the tuning?
It's lose the A, continue in
Okay.
fourth up to C. A, D, G, C. All in
Oh, so
fourth.
lose the E. Lose the E.
Lose the E.
Oh,
Who
okay, got it.
needs it? Who needs it?
Hmm.
That's how I think. I mean,
It kind of reminds me a little bit on a Romani style of tuning, right? Of the 3-string bass.
you mean my bass?
Ah, you have the one. Is that the same bass that I seen you play in Austin? I don't know, 10 years
Yeah,
ago or something.
yeah. This
That
is
has the
my
same one.
bass.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, this is the bass I play.
What kind of bass is that?
Well, I don't mind. We'll talk about it. This is a bass from the workshop of Liga Vasili in
Oh, in Romania.
Romania. You like that?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's a little something they did for me. I guess I can tell folks that I ran a violin shop in Austin, Texas called Violins Etc. They recently got sold. It's a lovely bass. I went to Reagan. Check this out. Ooh, pretty, 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 right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I went to Reagan, Romania, and that's because the violin shop that I worked at was very bass centric. Can you imagine that? The violin shop that I ran was bass centric. We would have
I have been in that shop. I remember that place.
trying to have 24 basses on the floor.
We filmed the video that eventually I'm gonna release it here on the Art of Slap Bass channel.
That's right.
If you do you remember it looked pretty cool. I had my old camera,
Yeah.
and then it was the
So
same time when I actually filmed Kevin as well.
that's right. But I went to Reagan, and while I was there, I bought 24 basses for the shop.
Oh
And,
wow.
which was a normal order. And some of them were very expensive. And while I was there, I said, I'm a big fan of Romani music, and I love how they have those little 5/8 3-string basses. I just love those, and I said, while I'm here in Romania, I'm going to look for one of those, maybe see about getting it back home. If I pick one up, I said, would you be able to throw that in with the order when you ship it? Because, they're shipping me 24 basses. What's another bass, right?
Yeah.
And they said, sure. If you find something, let us know. I said, okay. So this is when I'm on tour with Frank London's Brass All-Stars, right? The Klezmer Brass All-Stars. So
Just to mention, that's the band that I was talking about it at the very, very beginning.
right.
So
I go back to
yeah.
Budapest. I play some more gigs. Then I fly back to Texas. 3 weeks later, 25 boxes show up. And I go, wow. And that's the 25th box.
What? Wait, but so he found your bass, not?
He made it.
He made it. Oh wow, that's so cool.
He just made it for me.
Wow, that's
And
great.
they've never made one before. And so
Oh really? Wow.
So he made it. It was a gift.
Very special. Wow.
Very
that's
special.
Great.
I call it the Carpathian.
All right.
Yeah.
And
so
that's the only bass you have.
This is my bass.
All right.
We play acoustically here in New Orleans, and the thing is that and I ran the bass shop. I have my choice of basses. When you put 4 strings on the top of the bass and you're playing one of them, then you have 3 other strings dampening the top because the bridge kind of rocks. But if you only have 3 strings on the top, then you only have 2 strings dampening the top. I swear to you, this bass is so loud. It's so much louder than a 4-string bass. And when we're playing here acoustically in New Orleans, I have no problem being heard, especially the way I play.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
That's awesome. So, when is the next gig?
It was a Bad Livers gig. Bad Livers are playing again. Bad Livers are back to playing again. I had a gig. Well, that's a good segue. Should I play a Bad Livers tune?
Oh yeah, I would love to.
Yeah. So this is from a record that we released. That last one is from a record we released of straight bluegrass. This is from a record called the Ridgetop Sessions. I can't play you interplanetary music The old Sun Ra classic, which has a lot of slap bass on it, but it's also free jazz, so it's difficult to kind of replicate free jazz. But this is an example of that more aggressive style where I kind of play a lot more slap in it and more syncopation. So this is an example. This is called Ghost Train.
Oh man, I love Bad Livers. I love Bad Livers. I love Danny's voice. It fits so great with that style. It's amazing.
Since we stopped playing, he's put out nearly a dozen recordings, and they're all
really?
Yeah, they're all worth checking out.
Wow.
We're working on a new record right now.
Oh, Bad Livers?
Yeah.
Just make sure to slap a lot.
Well, it's just the two of us, so there's got to be a lot of racket.
Yeah. Were you playing tuba with him at all or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we just released a single, and I'm playing tuba on that.
Okay. Because I think that when I saw you playing Hardly Strictly Bluegrass Festival in San Francisco,
yep,
that you were playing tuba as well, besides your old Eminence bass.
Yeah. We'll talk about that.
All right.
We'll talk about that later. Let's get into Tex-Mex music.
Before we go there, I want to ask you something.
What's that?
So you played with quite a few different band leaders. I want to know, what were those band leaders think about slap? Did they, especially in bluegrass, bluegrass guys are very specific, or could be very specific about, all right, you should slap or you should not slap or never slap or this or that. Bad Livers were different. So I know that you had, and you were kind of and you were co-leaders, so you had your freedom. But in general, with other band leaders, what would you say? What were they thinking about slap? Was it cool, to slap or no slap, or what was the thing?
That's a complex question.
It is.
When you are coming up, when you are a sideman, I feel very strongly when you're a sideman, you really don't have a say in the matter. If I hire you and I go, I want you to do this, just play the bass pizzicato, nice and sweet, or I want you to play arco on that section, or I'd like you to play slap on that section. That's how it works. The boss is the boss. It's like a pirate ship. You may be a pirate. You may be a captain on your own ship. You may be a fine buccaneer, but you're on my boat, and I'm the captain. And what I say goes. That's when you're coming up. But when you're the captain of your own ship, you get to do whatever the heck you want. So if that's important to you, if playing slap bass is important to you, and it was to me, then you need to make those sacrifices or do the hard work to get to the position where you may do whatever it is that you want to do. However, I will tell you right now that there are two things at play for me as a professional. Number one, I oftentimes get hired by band leaders who know that I'm a band leader and know that I play slap bass and that I'm really good at it. And they don't care. They just know I'm a good bass player. Would I come and just play good bass for them? And that's fine. That's fine. Because I'm a professional. It's cool. I also know I have my own band. I can go do whatever I want. But then there's the beautiful thing. And that is, you are known for doing what you do. You do it so well that you're known for what you do. So when the phone rings, you know that they're going to want what Mark Rubin does. I want Mark Rubin's sound on my recording. My late friend Gary Primich, and we'll play some of his music later, he would call me up and go, Rubin, I want your stink on my record. In other words, the thing that you like to do, that you do best, please come and bring it to me. So, yes, in bluegrass music, there are some leaders who do not like it. When they hear it, it grates upon their ears, especially the kind of syncopation that I like to add to it. They hate it. Those little triplets that are from one period, one section to another. Oh, God. They just despise it. However, they won't hire me because I like to do that. That's my thing. Cuts me out of a lot of work. That's fine. That's a choice that I've made. So either do what the band leader says. This is what, let me tell you what Frank London, the leader of Frank London's Brass All-Stars, said. The definition of maturity for a musician is to, when you're offered a gig, is either take the gig and do what the gig is supposed to do. If you don't want to take the gig, don't take the gig. But either way, don't talk about the gig. Just take the gig or don't take the gig. It's just as simple as that. So I think that's
well, it makes sense. It makes sense. So I was like wondering more about like when you were, I mean, you were obviously always Mark Rubin, but like back in the day when you're kind of starting up, like, you know, like were there any demands, like, you know, no slap or?
Oh yeah,
Sure.
sure.
Yeah,
Especially,
I always juggle between those. You know, I like putting myself in new music situations when I'm playing music that maybe it's not my forte, but I want to get better at it. And then like sometimes I don't want to slap at all, but you know, I feel that I should because that's kind of like my forte. So
yeah, it got me fired. It got me fired from a session with Ray Benson,
hmm.
who ended up hiring Kevin.
Oh wow.
And those
Wait,
two,
because he wanted more slap or he wanted less slap?
I don't know. I think we just didn't get along.
Ah, okay, okay.
I spoke up.
Ah, okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, you know, some band leaders don't like that.
Yeah, so I spoke up. I kind of held my ground a little bit, or spoke up, or whatever.
Yeah.
And the fact
Well,
is Kevin's a far more like I'm kind of a jerk. I can woo. Especially when I was younger, I could be a real jerk. You know what I mean? So ask anybody. And you know, and he got the gig, and that gig led to Willie. So
oh, really? Oh, wow. That's great.
yeah. So there. You know what I mean? There's a lesson there. There's a real lesson there.
We are talking about strings, and we have a question
Okay.
by Joan Stencel. He asked anybody knows of some ADGC string sets. Bonus for soft and stretchy ones.
Well,
Do you
I
know
would
anything about it?
no, I don't because I just play ADG.
Okay. I mean, as far as what I know, it's I play Tomastic infilled strings, and they have that you can buy those strings like just separately, and you make your own set, and then you
I
have
I think there's a
ADGC.
solo gauge. I think there's a solo. Tomastic also makes a solo gauge string
Yes,
that I think the G could go up to C, kind of floppy. There's so many choices now.
yeah,
Also,
absolutely.
I know that there are custom gut makers now. There's a lot of gut strings that can be got from Baroque instruments. So, yeah, bonus for soft and stretchy. I would say do a little research, or do like he said and get the red weed whacker wire. You know what I mean? Find that. That's what he used. By the way, they all used labella tape wound strings. That's what the guys used. You know,
Oh,
remember
okay,
those
I
those
do.
awful labella tape wound strings? They got them because they were cheap and they reminded them of gut.
Ah, okay. Uh, so he received an answer, and he mentioned Superior Bassworks. They sell 6 string sets for 65.
Ah, there
Thank
you
you,
go.
Ugo, and very very close to guts and fraction of price. Ugo, you can mention maybe what those 6 strings are. Are they E, A, D, G, and C, and then low B or something?
Who
Anyway,
knows?
like if you answer, if you're still here, answer, and I'll feature your answer here. Um, so since we are talking about strings, like what strings are you using these days?
Whatever. To be frank with you, um, I had a set of obligatos on my bass that I didn't want to have on them, simply because that was the sound that the New Orleans jazz band leaders liked.
Hmm.
They wanted a they wanted a growl. They wanted a fundamental tone and a growl. They were really interested in a very particular jazz sound. I had guts on it before. Um, I I was very impressed with a set from Blast Cult,
Mm-hmm.
which is what I have on the Eminence. It's
Okay.
their steel string set. Um, I forget the name of it.
Low lives.
Lowlifes, I think. Yeah. I'm trying out a set on this. I'm just a curious lad. You know, if people, and first, it's also a 5/8 scale.
Mm-hmm.
So tensions, anything I put on it's going to be a little more floppy. Um, if a string manufacturer is watching this now and would like to help me in my experimentation, that would be
Of course.
nice.
Yeah. Whoever wants to follow Mark, whoever wants to um, reach out to Mark, I put some links down below.
It would be nice.
So you
It
can
would be.
follow him, and you can follow. I put my own links, so you can find both of us on Instagram, Facebook, um, websites. I also put down the link for Mark's music, the Bandcamp. So please check out those and follow the Art of Slap Bass. All the links are below. And if you're not subscribed, make sure to
Please do.
subscribe. It's okay, so I can't do this. It's somewhere over there in Mark's corner. There's a subscribe button, so please slap that one really hard. But with relaxed uh, uh, palm. Um, okay, so you wanted to. Oh, so there's an answer. So Hugo answered. It's a low B, high C. So there you go, John Stencil. It's
I might look into it.
B E A D G C. Um, for us. So I guess this question is for me, but by Mark Rayner. Any chance of a remake of the Art of Bass video? Maybe your info would be. Oh, I assume, Mark, you mean the Ungentle Art.
Well,
The Ungentle Art is Mark's thing. Art of Slap Bass is my project, my website, and everything else that hopefully it's gonna expand. But I think that this question is for Mark. It's about
well,
the Ungentle Art.
well. I would say that came out like 20 years ago or more. What is it? Um, I would like to say that then I am not interested. I personally am not interested in it. I feel that it's time to pass the torch, to move forward. A lot more information, a lot more technique. There are new players, like maybe the guy talking to me right now. There are new players now. There's so much has happened. So I really think that I'd like to pass that torch to a new generation and see what they can make of it. Maybe I could learn something. I wish to learn something. So yes, a new video would be very helpful for me. So let's see one. One of you guys watching this right now, one of you guys or gals, one of y'all, would you please think about that? And it would be a great service to our community.
All right. I feel obligation now. So where should we go now? Like, what's the next style that we're going to talk about? Like,
I'll tell you a story. I was sitting at a house. This is about 1991. We're going to roll back a little bit.
That's pre-Austin or already
this is in Austin. This is I was in Austin. I'm sitting in a house before I was hanging out with Kevin. Sitting in this house where I'm sleeping on the couch, and I've got the cable on, and I'm skimming the cable, and I see Univision, and I see a bass player on Univision, and it's an upright bass player, and he's slapping. But there's an accordion player and a guitar player with him. Now, this is a true story. This is they're all wearing Western outfits, like really great gabardine Western outfits, right? And the bass player, all of a sudden, while he's slapping, picks up the bass and puts it with the back on top of the head of the accordion player and then starts running around him. While this is going on, the guitar player, now I'm making this up, takes his guitar, which by the way is a Martin Triple Odd 18, takes his guitar, puts it up on his belly with the back up, pulls out of his shirt an egg and some lighter fluid, pours lighter fluid on the back of the guitar, breaks the egg, lights it, and cooks it, and eats it. This is all while the accordion player is playing a polka, and the bass player is spinning around with the bass over his head.
All right, so let me guess. That's we're gonna talk about conjunto now.
Yes. Now,
all right.
This is the bassist. Now, this is true. The bassist then takes the bass off the guy's head, puts it on the ground, continues to slap, right? And then right before the song ends, he pulls out of his shirt some lighter fluid, pours that all over his bass, lights his bass on fire, and then spins the bass to put it out. And the moment the song ends, he grabs it and it's out.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is in black and white. It was probably in the 30s. And I'm just going, poof, like, what just happened? And my Spanish is light. It's very light. But what I find out is they're announcing the passing of a conjunto musician from San Antonio by the name of Juan Viesca. And I'm like, great. Here's this wonderful bass player who lived 90 miles from me, playing a style of slap bass I was never even aware of. And today, he's dead. You know what I mean? It was like, it was.
So you found out about him literally on the day that he died?
Day he died.
What a coincidence.
Literally. Right?
Wow.
So I didn't being a curious person, and that's how I know everything I know. I went to my friend Steve James, and Steve James had lived in San Antonio.
Blues guy? Blues
guy. Well, let's say roots guy. Roots American guitarist. Blues is a form, not a genre. And so pop up Juan there. pop up a picture of Juan. You got him. Let's
sure.
let's honor his memory. There's Juan, wonderful musician. He also played violin, by the way. He look him up. This is, if you can hear his playing on our Hooli records, playing with Don Santiago Jimenez and with the Fred Zimmerly Trio. I strongly recommend you look those up. It's on our Hooli, Fred Zimmerly Trio, and Don Santiago. And look at that smile. Great guy. I inquired on the bass, by the way. Years later, I made discreet inquiries about the bass, maybe securing it. But then I found out that later in life, he had a real hard time putting the bass out. And so the bass got a little, how shall we say, crispy. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't anything that you would want to kind of necessarily have at your house. So I go to see Steve James, and I go, Steve, you have to tell me everything about this guy, Juan Viesca, man. Like, what's the deal? And he said, well, I was just talking with Santiago Jimenez, and he's bereft because he's got these, he had just planned on going into the studio tomorrow to make some recordings with Juan. And he doesn't know what he's going to do because Santiago Jimenez plays the traditional sound of music just like his father, Don Santiago. And that sound doesn't have drums. It has accordion, bajo sexto, and upright bass doing what they call the tololoche style.
Just to make sure, just to check, is that Flaco's brother?
That's Flaco's younger brother.
Okay.
And by the way, that family has a lot of brothers.
Oh yeah, of course. I know.
A lot of brothers.
I'm familiar.
Oh yeah, Flaco's real name is Leonard, by the way, and Santiago's real name is Jimmy. It's confusing. They call, it's a long story, but he was bereft that he didn't know what he was going to do. Santiago himself was going to play electric bass, but that's not what he wanted to do. So my friend Steve said, you know, Rubin, what you should do is you should just call him. Just call him. Maybe he'll hire you. Just give him a ring. I go, just call him? I said, yeah, man, here's his number. Here, just take his number.
So were you already playing Slap at that? Conjunto. Were you already playing Conjunto at that point? No. Okay.
I had a record of Narciso Martinez, but there was no bass on it.
Ah, okay.
And I had heard Don Santiago with Juan Viesca on it. I didn't know that's who it was. But I'd heard Conjunto music live out at the flea market in Austin, and I'd heard bands play in Dallas, so I had a gist for it. You know what I mean? Polka and waltzes. Kind of had a good idea about that. But as far as how slap bass worked in it, I didn't have a handle. So I thought, well, okay, I've got this phone number. So I pick up the phone and I call this number and I go, hey, and and he goes, hello. I go, is this Santiago Jimenez Jr.? And he says, yes. I said, hi, this is Mark Rubin. I'm calling you from Austin, Texas. I said, my friend Steve James told me to call you and let you know that I play the slap bass kind of like Juan Viesca. And there was silence on the end of the line. And he goes, what are you doing Saturday, 10 a.m.? And that was it. I drove down there to San Antonio Saturday morning, 10 a.m. I met him, and it was really perfunctory. He said hello, and he welcomed me into his studio. There I am at the Conjunto Festival. There I am laying it down, and that's the band. That was us. By the way, that caused a wild sensation. Like that caused a wild sensation. That's the Conjunto Festival. They're not used to having Anglos on stage there. I just want to point that out, especially playing the most traditional of the musics. But just to go back to the recording, I walk into the studio. He's got his 4-track machine up. He's got the microphone set up. I walk in. He goes, polka, key of C. 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom. And that was it. That was literally it. It was 1 or 2 takes, and we did 20 tunes. We literally did 20 tunes. And those 20 tunes ended up being 2 cassette tapes that he would sell at his gigs.
Oh, wow, okay.
Right? And then when I got him a deal on Watermelon Records up in Austin, Texas, they took the best of those 2 cassettes. They took from one cassette he had from before that I'm not on, and then from the stuff that I am on, and he put those together and put out a record called
and is that a record? That's a record that got nominated for the Grammy, right?
And lo and behold, the first record that I produced for him on Watermelon Records gets him a Grammy nomination. And the thing is that this was a genuine comeback for him. This is a genuine comeback. He had had a bad decade before that, where he had, and so he was kind of forgotten there for a while. And I showed up, and I didn't know that he had a bad decade, if you know what I mean. And I just kind of like kicked his ass a little bit. We ended up making 3 records. I produced his 3rd one. I'm really, really, really proud of that one. It's called Música de Presente, de Futuro y Pasado. And you can find that. That's on Bandcamp. You can find that record. I'm really proud of that one.
It's on your Bandcamp?
Yeah.
Okay. So Slappers, link is below.
Yeah. But what I did was, as after I did that recording, kind of like after the fact, you know what I mean? Like, you jump in and do it, and you're like scared. You're like, am I doing this right? And he's going, no, this is great. This is great. This is great. And what I loved about him was I didn't speak Spanish, but what he'd do is he would make sure that I knew what the songs were about.
Oh, wow.
It was great. So that, like, he wanted me to emote, if that made sense to you. He wanted, you know what I mean? Like, he wanted me to know what the song was about. He wouldn't tell me what the chords were, but he would let me know what the song was about. And so after...
So he wanted some kind of emotional aspect in your...
Yeah, he wanted me to like,
make
play it happy, play it sad. You know what I mean? And I thought that was amazing. That was, I learned a great lesson from that. That even the bass player should be on board, with what the tune is trying to get across. I thought that was a huge lesson for me. So, in other words, you're not going to go wild on your slapping when you're talking about 2 kids dying in the Rio Grande.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's, that sort of thing. So that was a big eye opener. But afterwards, I went back and, man, I tore those recordings of Juan Viesca apart. You know what I mean? Like, I studied that stuff. And he was kind of a clown. You know what I mean? He really was a showman. He was a showman and a clown, but he developed a style of playing that they call the gallop, the gallop. Mm-hmm. And in polka music, I'll give you an idea, kind of the classic Viesca kind of a thing, to where it's so. He would also kind of get on. He would do, but he would literally hit the bass. You can actually hear it on some of the recordings. And what I'm going to do for you right now is I'll play you a polka. This is actually you know, for publishing reasons, I'm going to play you a series of recordings that I made with a guy named Jose Moreno, and he's an indigenous Mexican fiddler and accordion player. And I made these recordings with him when we were playing at an event called Fiddle Tunes. And so I'm going to show you 3 different Hispanic styles and show you how the slap bass works in them. The first is just a standard polka, and you'll see that they use the slap in different ways to kind of go from section to section. So this is a polka called Las Perritas. No, it's not. Oh, here we go. Let's move right along. Almost like a tuba. So that's kind of what happens on the polka. One of the most important dances that they do is a waltz. You would never really kind of play a slap bass on a waltz. You would play that really pizzicato and straight. A dance style that got really popular in Texas, especially with the dancers, is actually a Colombian dance form. It got real popular in Texas in the 50s, and boy, you're going to hear it everywhere, wherever Hispanic folks are. And traditionally, it doesn't really happen on the upright bass, but I developed a technique that got real popular with my band leaders, which I'll play you now. This is a cumbia. So let me play a little bit of that. This is called the Cumbia Cali. Come on. So when you're in a little trio like that, in a cumbia, there's a shaker like that. So if you can hit that kind of, if you can make that slap sound or any kind of approximation like that, it really moves the dance beat forward. So there's that. And I sat down too easy. And then there's a dance style, there's a slap style that Kevin showed, but I think I may play it a little differently. There's a thing called a huapango, and the Mexican hat dance. That's a huapango. Here's an example of one right here. and how I kind of play it. Takes a lot of triplets. Also, you have what I learned from the guitarone is this offbeat. So you're going da ba da 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 da. So you got a little syncopation. Like that.
Keep the bass, Mark.
Yeah.
Now, since you already started talking a little bit about it, but I wanna ask you now a little bit something that I always ask everyone. It's about terminology. So, what are the different slaps that you're using? There's like lots of confusion. I studied that and analyzed, and I came to my own um, terminology that I'm using. But I want to ask you. So, for example, what would be a single slap for you?
I have my methodology for teaching.
Oh, okay.
I have heard yours, and I don't know that we're in agreement.
Okay.
Okay. To me, there is pluck, right, and recoil. So to me, a single slap is this. That's a single slap. A double slap is, pardon me. So you got a pluck, single slap, double slap, triplet. That's how.
So wait. So what is a single slap for you?
That's when the hand comes back.
Oh, so when you have that, okay.
Pluck, slap. So the slap is the hand hitting back.
Okay, so basically everything that all the rockabilly bass players were doing in the 50s, so that's when they were slapping the bass, that's not the slap.
I can't comment.
Okay.
I just know what I do.
All right. So, but all right. So
I don't have any terminology for this.
Okay.
I don't know what that is. Just something I do. That's a fast triplet to me.
I mean, considering that is always the same speed, regardless of the tempo, I would consider that an ornament, and I would call that either flam slap, as Adam Booker wrote, or I would call it a roll, considering that you have like a few different options how to play it. Some people call it a drag, which kind of makes sense if you're really dragging, but like sometimes you're not dragging on a G string, whatever, and you can use just fingers for that. So I prefer other terms like roll or flam slap. Kind of makes sense for that.
I like roll. That sounds nice. Like a drum.
All right. So roll. One
roll.
extra.
Let's go with roll.
Okay, so while you're still having a bass, tell me, so what are the different slap patterns that you're playing, and just like name them whatever you're naming them?
Well, that's a difficult thing to say. I mean, it's just when that's my, that's just my basic, that's my basic single slap, playing. And then, country double slap, also in bluegrass, that I kind of, tie it together. 4D string. Got D string. I don't really. It's Djordje. You know me. I'm bipolar. I don't really come up with terminologies for this stuff. I haven't really. Analyzed it too much. I just kind of get in and do it.
I like, for me it was kind of like important, like, mostly when I'm explaining that to other people, and I think that teaching with certain using certain terminology, it kind of helps people
You know what?
develop their own style.
I'll
So
tell you what
that's
I
kind
do
of my thing.
when I'm teaching, Judge. When I'm teaching, I have a blackboard, and I kind of get people to visualize it.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, this is your downbeat. This is where your hand goes. You know what I mean? Like, I've developed a methodology that seems to work for folks.
Sure. Yeah, that's always helpful.
That's a visualization that helps them. Also, I get them to work with time. You got to work in time. Tempo, tuning, and taste. Those are my things about that I try and teach my students. That they got to stay. This slap technique is useless without being in time.
Yes,
it's
I couldn't
useless.
agree more.
Yeah, it's. I still, I've got this tuner here on my bridge, but it's also got a metronome function, and I use it. You know what I mean? Like I literally will, when I'm working on a new tune or something like that, I will, since there's nobody else around, I will use that metronome function. I mean, I'm even at this age, I still use metronome.
Oh yeah,
it's essential.
I always say like a groove and the intonation are kind of the most important thing. If you have
it's
you
what
have a
gets you
groove,
hired.
it's yeah, exactly.
It's what gets you.
Slap's not gonna get you hired.
Nope. Nope.
Slap is kind of like the icing on the cake.
And tuning. Time and tuning. Those
We're
things
on the same
things
page about
are,
that. I would like to go. Well, you can leave your base. I will like to mention, since we're talking about Juan Viesca and Conjunto and all that stuff, I want to mention a couple things before we go to another subject, which probably going to be more roots and blues, whatever you feel like
Sure.
it. But I want to tell. I'm not sure like how many of you are familiar with Conjunto and Juan Viesca. We talked a little bit about Conjunto in the first episode with Kevin Smith because he played. Um, was it the band Los Codillos? Cadillos,
Los
something like that?
Codillos.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he played a couple tunes with the backing track like that he recorded with them.
That's a great.
Sounded
They were a great
amazing.
band. They're a great band.
And so a couple of records that I would recommend for conjunto bass playing. One would be actually the one that you gave me, the one that you sent me as a present would be San Antonio conjuntos from the 50s. I believe that's also on our Huli.
Yes.
And then one record, especially for Juan Viesca's playing, that I would recommend would be from Don Santiago Jimenez, but senior, not the one that Mark played with, not the
Yeah, I think
junior.
Flacco's on bajo sexto on that record.
I believe so, but not on all the not on all tunes because the record is called First and Last Recordings or
Right.
something like that.
Yes.
And his first and last recordings, and they are like from I believe 1937 and 79 or something like that. But on the recordings from the 30s, it's a different bass player. It's Santiago Morales.
Mhm.
Um, and on the recordings from the 70s, that's Juan Viesca. And so we were talking about slap in polka style. I would recommend Viva El West Side is one of the songs where Viesca plays slap with the polka beat, and like he used slap in pretty much any conjunto genre like ranchera or polka, mazurka as well. And he played also rumba beats. So he didn't play. He played single, doubles,
Yeah.
triple slaps, rumba beats, and Juan Viesca was very and gallops. So Juan Viesca was excellent bass player and love his bass playing. And thanks to you, Mark, I discovered him. And because of that, and actually thanks to Greg Goldwell, was our mutual friend as well. So who interviewed you for that Bass Player
Yeah.
magazine interview? So
I
thanks
owe
to you
him a
two,
lot.
I found out. Yeah,
Yeah, I owe him a lot. Yeah, I owe Greg a lot.
Greg is a great guy. If you guys are not familiar with Greg, you should be. He's probably the only guy that actually was writing about upright slap bass technique in the Bass Player magazine.
Yeah.
And I actually interviewed him on my website, Art of Slap Bass. If you guys are not familiar with Art of Slap Bass, you definitely should be. It's artofslapbass.com. Link is down below. Go ahead and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Um, I actually interviewed Greg Orville as well for the website, and it was because of his contribution to to the for promoting uh, um, slap bass. And here's the interview with him. The date's August 13, 2009. So
By the way, I
11 years
archived
ago.
my story for bass player. I archived mine on my blog, and I'll send you a link to that.
Oh, please do. I will I will link that out. All right, so this is artofslapbass.com interview with Greg Goldwell. And the reason why I'm pulling out this is I want to mention just a few articles that he wrote for Bass Player magazine. First one is um, is with Mark Rubin from August '99, and it was called Acoustic Abuse with Rubin's Recommended Reefs.
Oh well,
So
that's it.
uh,
Yeah, that's it right there.
I know that's it. I did my research. And then he wrote about Marshall Lytle, Roland Guerin, another excellent bass player, jazz bass player from New Orleans. Um, he wrote about Charnay Moffett, like who did another jazz guy who also used slap bass technique, and he did a couple articles with Lee Rocker, and he did an article about me and Lemmy when we were playing together in the band, the Headcat. And let me see if I can pull out. Oh, okay, here it is. Here's the one that I was talking about. Here's that article that Mark archived article. There you go. You can see this. I guess so. Hope so. So Mark Rubin Acoustic Abuse. It's on markrubin.com, which is the website that you're not using too much these days, right?
That's right.
And it's under markrubin.com /publish /bass player without a any .html, and it's by Greg Ollo. Um, so it's a little interview, and then Rubin's recommended riffs, and you can find all kinds of stuff. I remember I bought every single recording you mentioned, every single one, not just one, like several of those. Oh, and you're probably the reason why I found out about this particular album, his first and last recordings from the Ahuli, and
I
all
wrote
kinds
I
of
wrote
stuff.
I wrote Vlad's name wrong. It's Vlad VRL.
Yeah, I know, I remember. It's funny thing actually that you're mentioning that because you were uh, I I knew about Vlad at that time, but I did not know him personally. But you were jamming, or you met him in Austin like a year before that, or something. I met you in 2003, I believe, or 2002, something like that. And when did you meet Vlad and Tara of the Hedux?
93.
Oh, 93. Oh, like long, 10 years before that. Oh, wow.
93.
Okay.
Yeah, I've run into them
Oh,
many
okay.
times over the year. Yeah, I came out of a rest stop bathroom in the middle of France one day and ran into them.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Okay.
yeah, I've run into them a bunch. When we were touring Europe, we toured on the same circuit. Yeah, I actually got to play with them on stage once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, they borrowed my bass. Well, yeah, hold on. No, pardon me.
That
They
one?
96. I met them first in 96, and then I hung out again with them in 2002 because I had the bass, and
Ah, okay.
my bass is what they played when they came to town. And then they did
Ah, okay.
then they
Well,
did
that makes sense.
and then at the end of the gig they did a big dance, and they were like, Vlad was like, I'm tired. I'm tired. Would you come play? And I was like, yeah, I'll come play. What the heck? And we did like a 40-minute dance set.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it
That's
was
cool.
it was the first time I played with Lautari musicians. Not the last,
Wow.
not the last, but the first time.
That's amazing. Like when I met you in 2003, so you wrote. I had like a little book where I was writing all my slap craziness, and then you just turn the page and you say like something like "Hell, hi to Vlad," but you wrote also Vlad Vadim or something like that. You misspelled something, but it was interesting because I took that paper and then I gave it to him because you told me to do that. Like a couple months after that, because I told you that the Tar of the Hajduk would come to play to Serbia, and that
I
was
remember
actually
that.
one of the most amazing concerts. It was crazy. They played in a cave acoustically. It was wild. It was the
That
same.
Roman that Roman cave.
Actually, they played. You remember the place where you played in Belgrade?
Yeah.
So they were supposed to play the same place, but it started raining.
So they went
So
inside.
everybody. Sorry.
I know the cave.
Yes. So we all went inside of the cave.
Wow.
So I was right there, like like half a meter from Vlad, and it was crazy. They played acoustically. It was wild. It was wild. It was amazing. I seen them and I hung out with them quite a few times actually, like in San Francisco as well, in Belgrade a couple of times, and but that time that show was unbelievable,
Yeah.
unbelievable. He gave me a little slap lesson.
Me
Day
too.
later, I came to their hotel and then like to his
Yeah.
hotel room.
See, the first time I hung out with those guys, um, they made me their gage. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
they got stuck in Austin for 7 days, and because their Dallas date fell through and their Houston date fell through, and they were stuck in Austin for 7 days. So the promoter knew me, and the local Romani guys knew me, right? So they knew I was cool. So they went to the promoter and said, "We've got a house gage, so if you need anything, check this guy out." And I had the Bad Livers van, so
Oh,
so they called me up and they said, "Hey man, these guys are getting restless, man. Would you like to take them out and around?" I said, "Sure, man. Hey man, I love this band." I said, "Yeah." So I loaded up about 7 of them, and we went out to flea markets and thrift stores, and I took them to Green Hall. I took them to this big open air market and to an outlet mall. Oh my God! I took these Rajasthani people to an outlet mall. Their eyes got that big, and man, I had this wonderful time hanging out with these guys for like a week. And then the concert came, and this is '96, and they borrowed my bass. And before the concert, like I wore a really beautiful Wyatt Barra shirt, this beautiful Wyatt Barra shirt, and everyone tried to buy it off of me.
Oh yeah.
Amazing. They wanted the shirt. And then before the gig, I had the bass and I pulled him aside and I go, "Hey man, uh, could you show me your solo there on the Turkichesto, man? Could you show me that, man?" And he looked at me and goes, "Yeah, sure." And what I did was I played it in front of him. I said, "Am I doing this right?" And everybody around me just fell out. They were like, wow! Like they didn't know I was a musician. They had no idea that I played and that I just played that right in front of them. And they came up and hugged me and they were kissing on me and they were like, "You holy cow!" And then I had my DAT machine out and they played me a bunch. He played me, "This is a Serba, and this is a this, and this is a," you know what I mean? Like, this is a Rechinitsa, and
This
this
is
is,
Brew, this is Jumperale.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like, this is this, and this is a this, and it was like, oh man, it was so much fun. And that's how the next time they came through, they asked me to come and play because
That's so cool.
yeah,
I had like a similar experience with them. It was that I had that little hangout lesson at Vlad's room, like when we played. It was mostly the same thing, like what's Serba, what's a brew, what's Jumperale, what's
yeah.
we didn't talk about Rechinitsa because Rechinitsa is Bulgarian. I didn't
I
even.
was I'm just saying, that just came to mind, but that's not.
Okay.
I meant
And then
Gemperale.
and then Turcheska. If you guys are not familiar, check out Vlad Viorel. Check out Taravde Hajduk's, one of the most amazing slap bass solos of all time.
Yep.
It's in the song Turcheska. It's
Yeah.
great. It's
It
and you
just
should learn
stands
it.
alone. Stands
It
alone, man.
does. It's great. Like there are actually two bass solos in that song, in the middle, and then at the end, which is all single slap, but like at the end, it's super amazing. Everything is amazing about that band.
Right.
They're not. If you have a chance to see, they still tour. If you have a chance to see them, go see them.
Yeah.
That's not the same people. That's not the same. Vlad is not in the band. They're still great, not as great as they used to be, but
There's plenty of
what
evidence on them online. Plenty of
yeah,
evidence.
yeah. Like, I mean, I think that one of the managers died, so the things change, but life happened.
Life
But
happens.
they're still great. I
Mhm.
remember that I played Torcheska for them in for what was the guy's name, the accordion guy. um I forgot, but I hung out with him in San Francisco, and played in one music store on Haight and Ashbury. I played played him Francesca. That was pretty cool. It's still one of my favorite solos.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's amazing. Um, all right, so I want to go back to more of your blues side. I know a lot about it, but I don't want you to tell us. I want to mostly about Gary Primich and Steve James, right?
Yeah, you bet. There was we
Yes.
had Steve, Danny Barnes and I, and Steve James and uh, a guy named Gary Primich, who's not with us anymore. He played harmonica. Steve James played the guitar. Danny played the tenor banjo, the 5-string banjo, and I played the tuba and the bass. And we had a string band. We had like this little kind of hokum and black music string band that just it killed. It was just like we it was like a real killer little band, and we would back up. There was an African American piano player by the name of Gray Ghost. His real name was Roosevelt T. Williams, and we backed him up on Thursday nights, and it was just fun. We just played this great old material that we just loved to play, and it really the joy of our playing just came out. And it was Steve. It was Gary who called me up and goes, "Man, I need your stink on my record," and we played on each other's records all the time. And what was great is I would get a call from Gary, and he would like just have a little trio. It would be me, Gary, and Steve, and then Steve would call me up, and it would just be me and Steve. That would be the whole session. So that would be it. I would have to play a lot of bass to make that work. So some of my most some of the most slap bass that I play is on their record. So let me give you an example of just me, Gary, and Steve playing, and just to show you, number one, the joy of playing music, number one, and number two, this is a version of Easy Riding Mama, which everybody knows, and I'll show you kind of like. Listen, everybody, I remember, if you want to know why I'm here, this is my mama, don't tell her to sing. If you like the way I play, listen to what I'm trying to say. This is my mama, don't tell her to sing. Now all night long, I sing this song. If you get this song, you take the wrong and it'll make you loose, make you tight, make you shake until the broad daylight. Easy my mama, don't tell her to sing. So you want to talk about getting hired to do exactly what it is that you do. He didn't say, don't do that. He didn't say, I don't like that. He just said, get in there and get after it. And then that was one take. We just got in there and played it and went boom, and then that was the take. So later on, a couple years later, I got a phone call from Steve James, and he goes, hey, I'd like you to come play on this session. I show up down there. He's all by himself. So we do a tune called, let me find it here on the computer. I have a 16-year-old computer, which doesn't play along. This is a Charlie Patton tune. It's from a collection of Charlie Patton numbers called Way Out on the Desert. That's how that goes.
That's awesome. I love that, man.
He called that Bearcat.
Like,
come on, Rubin, let's get in there and Bearcat
it. When I was listening to those recordings, you know, I always thought that besides Easy Riding Mama with Gary Primich, that a cool song that you played was Shake the Boogie, where you played some cool slap. And
well, that was R&B, you know what I mean? Just, you know, that was your standard, you know. That was just your standard, you know, where I'm going. That's the intro, you know what I mean?
Sure. And I remember it.
every day, you know. You know what I'm talking about? I can do this for days. I love it. I love that music. I could play that beautiful backbeat R&B. What's important, I guess I should say this when you're playing African American music on the upright bass, and you're playing the slap technique, man, you got a drummer. If you got a drummer, man, you got to work with that son of a gun. You can't be slapping over him necessarily. You've got to find the pocket, and you got to put your note in the pocket. And if he's coming back with his snare, you've got to match his snare. You can't like be ahead of him or behind him, or it's just going to sound bawaka. It's not right. It's not going to be cool. You're not going to get hired.
I'm glad you're actually talking about it, because that's something that I learned once I moved to US. And that, if somebody asked me the reason why I decided to move to US, that is the reason. The groove that you guys have here, that when I listen to bands, and when I was playing with bands like back in Europe, some are good bands, they don't have the same pockets. And it's really hard to explain like what is a pocket, but it they you can't find the same thing over there. So it's, for me, it was very important to move here and basically
Well,
to learn how to do it right.
all of
It's
our
kind of,
music,
yeah.
all of our music here that we're exposed to, almost all of it, is black music, and so it's going to have a backbeat, and so we're exposed to it all the time. So it's only natural and right that we've got that thing about a groove. But I'm going to reiterate it. You've got to have that pocket. You've got to be in it, and the way that slap it's got to fit in the mix.
Especially slap, yeah, it's
If it's
tricky.
sticking out.
But when it happens, it's magic. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah, and I got to tell you that Gary Primich, man, playing with Gary Primich and his drummer, the way he played, man, I could put that slap right in there, man, with him. And man, it was a beautiful machine. When it happens, it happens. You can hear it. You know who the king of that is? Willie Dixon.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
The king of that is Willie Dixon. Just listen to a lot of Willie Dixon, you'll be there. So I
yes,
think
everything that I'm pretty sure that at this point, like almost everyone is familiar with Willie Dixon, but if you're not, Big Three Trio, check it out.
Big Three Trio.
Yes,
Without
absolutely. It's funny thing. Like I found out about Willie Dixon and Big Three Trio from actually Kevin's interview that came out like in mid 90s or something. There was that book about swing revival, red book like with yellow swing letters, and then there was Kevin's interview inside, and then he was talking about that, and he gave his favorite records, and one of those was Big Three Trio, and then
he turned me onto it.
did he? Oh, okay.
I mean, that's how it worked.
Yeah.
We shared, we learned all the time.
Oops. I almost dropped my computer. I wonder, like, do you guys still see me fine? Like, now it's completely dark.
Oh, looks great. You look great,
I have
man.
like a little tiny light. I work like kind of a lot on my setup back home, with audio and everything. Everything's connected. I'm like, what should I do? Like, like, should I continue doing these slap streams while I'm in Europe or not? And then I'm like, I'll do this. Unfortunately, I don't have my bass with me, so I can't do a lesson. But Mark, please promise when I come back to the States, like we can do um, a lesson like the way I have it in the other slap streams, so I can post it.
It would be an honor. It would be an honor.
Okay, we'll do that. I'll be back in a couple of weeks, so I'll do that. So like, there's a question for you, Mark. Mark, is your neck a standard size, or is it
No,
more slender than an ordinary 5/8 with only the 3 strings?
No, this is where I win. It's a standard 5/8 neck, which means the spacing between my strings is wider than normal. So so in other words, they didn't make it skinnier for the 3 strings. They just took a standard off the rack neck and then cut it. So my string spacing is a little wider than other folks. I like it.
I think that's kind of the standard way, like, of doing, like, in Romanian Romani music, right?
Yeah, that's how they do it.
You know, one thing that I have actually never compared and never put like too much effort into it. If you compare like those old classical, like, I guess 18th century, maybe 19th century 3-string basses, like Dragonetti played.
Oh yeah.
Like, were they kind of the same thing or not?
No, I've done research on this. We have reprints of catalogs that we had at the violin shop where all the way up until 1900, you could order 3-string basses. You know what I mean? So it was not uncommon. Lots of the basses in Texas, a lot of the basses that we found in Texas, because they were from Czech immigrants who had brought them with them, I'd say half of them were 3-string.
Wow.
The 4th string was added in the late 1800s to accommodate the new compositions, especially from Saint-Saëns and Mahler and people like that, who were writing lower and lower and lower. Debussy, people like that. So the guys were retuning their basses.
Wait, but they were adding 5th string for Beethoven and Mahler.
Oh, absolutely. They had already had 4, but they were having to reach. But they had old basses. Guys had old basses.
Okay.
So they were dispensing their necks. You know
okay.
what I mean? So a lot of these old basses that you see in symphonies today started out with a 3-string neck, like the bass that Dragonetti is seen with. You know what I mean? I guarantee you that bass is still out in the world, but now has a 4 or 5-string neck on it. I mean, it wasn't uncommon, and the whole time that I've been in Eastern Europe, I see them all the time. It's loud. I love it.
John Sensel wrote something.
You talk about band leaders. Are you ready for this? None of my band leaders know it's 3 strings. They only notice it like at the end of the gig. They may have hired me 15 times and they have no idea that it's a 3-string bass. Why? Because what? It's different. They can't hear it.
Yeah. So did you want to say anything else besides about playing with Gary Primich? And
well, he left us.
Steve
he
James?
left us too soon. And I strongly recommend you check out his records. Like Mr. Freeze is a really good one. Company Man is a really good one. So I suggest you check those records out. Steve James has a lot of records out. I think he owns the masters to his records, and go to stevejames.com and check those out. The ones that have bands on them, most of his records are solo, but any of the records that have a band on it, I'm on. The band is Gary Primich, Danny Barnes, and me. So it's quite a good band.
And you played slap on Downbound Train.
Oh, that's my favorite, man. Yeah, right? Yeah, man, it's one of my favorite bass lines ever, man, because it's minimalist. I go, yeah, right? That's a great, that's one of my favorite intros of all time, man. Yeah, look it up. Downbound Train. I almost made that one of the things I was going to play along with. But,
oh, really? Okay. Yeah, you almost you picked up kind of the tunes that I picked up when I was analyzing your playing.
That's actually that's a tune by who wrote that? That was Chuck Berry wrote that song.
Oh, really? Wow.
That's a Chuck Berry tune. But yeah, that's a great tune.
That's cool.
These are examples of how I got hired to do exactly what it is I do. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay, I have a question about it that I always ask my guests. How do you get a gig? What would be your advice? And try to think about how do you get gigs back then and how do you get gigs now, because times changed. Like, so what are some of your recommendations? How would some kid that
okay,
plays
there's
sub bass get a gig?
there's two good resources. Two good resources. Number one, look on the internet for these two resources. Number one, first is Thelonious Monk wrote a series of rules for how to be a musician. And it's great. And he has a thing about how to get gigs, which is, in a nutshell, is be prepared, be on the scene, and don't hustle anybody for work. In New Orleans, there's a saying is, if you want your place, you got to show your face. But that's the one resource. That's one resource for you, which you can check out. There's like 24 little tidbits of wisdom on that. And then the second one is that at DannyBarnes.com, my old buddy Danny wrote an essay called How to Be a Sideman. And that is a wonderful resource about how to deport yourself as a sideman. So how do you get a gig? Well, you prepare yourself to be a person who gets a gig. So I give you those two resources, number one. Those are resources I didn't have. So number one, have your chops just as tight as they possibly can be. Think about, what gig is it that you want? What is, like, be clear to yourself. What gig do you want? Then you find somebody who has a gig like that you want. And then you basically take them out to lunch and ask them, how did they do it? I took so many people out to lunch. It's like business. You know what I mean? Like, hey man, do you have time to like get coffee, or can I take you to lunch or something? I got some questions. It's really not that hard. Or, just show up a bunch of times. LBJ, the great president of our United States, had a saying, and that is, any goal is achievable. All you have to do is everything you have to do. So if you want to get a gig, you just have to find out everything you have to do to get that gig. So every gig is different. So you need to know what kind of gig. If you want to get a gig in a band that plays down on Frenchman Street here in New Orleans, you have to, A, have your chops absolutely hot and tight. You have to have your attitude really, really good. Read those two resources I gave you. And then you have to kind of like show your face. You have to be around. Here in New Orleans, they have a tradition of allowing people to sit in. You know what those sit-ins are? Those are auditions. But that's the way things work here. That's how this one street operates. So that's what you learn to get those gigs there. So you know me, I know how to get those gigs there. I just told you. Now, how do you get a gig with a touring band? Well, you need to find that out. Like, define yourself. Define what the gig is you want. And then go find somebody who's done it. And take them out, like, figure out what it was. Take Kevin Smith to lunch. Kevin Smith is the nicest guy you're ever going to meet. If you run into him while he's on the road and he's got a day off, ask him out to lunch and go give me some advice. Look, man, let me give you a piece of advice. A wise man said to me, if you meet somebody who's at the top of the game in the game you want to be in, ask them the best piece of advice they ever got. Because they're definitely going to tell you, because number one, everybody likes to talk about themselves. Number one. And number two, you're going to get the best piece of advice. Right? So, you know what I mean? Like, and then you'd be surprised you can open a dialogue. And for instance, famous people don't want to talk BS. If they meet somebody, they want to talk something substantive. So when I ran into Willie Nelson one time, and he asked me if I had a joint, and I didn't, but it was okay. I said, excuse me, Mr. Nelson, can I ask you, like, do you have a minute? I was wondering what the best piece of advice you ever got. And he said, Ernest Tubb told him when he first moved to Nashville, son, get yourself a Fender bass. Nobody ever went hungry with a Fender bass.
Wow.
Which I thought was kind of deep.
Yeah. Yeah, those advices were from the the old guys are the best. I mean,
and then he shared this. Check this out. He said once Willie Nelson got to be a member of the Grand Ole Opry, he said he was backstage and Ernest Tubb congratulated him for being a member of the Opry. And then he said, now, son, don't be caught anywhere without a Sharpie. It's more important than your guitar. In other words, be good to your fans.
Ah, okay.
Be good to your fans. Never be a jerk to your fans. Always have a Sharpie to sign your name on something. And I was like, cool. Willie Nelson just sat here and gave me two great pieces of advice.
That's awesome.
And I got them straight from Ernest Tubb.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
that's how it goes with us.
Right. So that's possible. You know what I mean? And that's great information. And it's possible. So you want to know how to get a gig? Ask somebody who's got the gig that you'd like to have. Maybe not that gig in particular, but a gig you would like. And that's advice I got from my granddad. My granddad said, if you see a man on stage and you want to be on that stage, find out how he got on that stage. That's what I got to say.
All right, so now I'll ask you, since we're talking about advices and all of that, but this will be related to bass. What would be your advice, like, for other bass players? And I would like you to mention also mistakes that you were making. You mentioned a little bit about that you were not very relaxed, that kind of influenced your technique. But I would like you to talk a little bit more about, what is the advice that you would give, like, to some other bass players, other slap bass players?
Okay, for slap bass, we need to understand. Let me stand back. We need to understand that slap bass isn't just like going and playing guitar or going and playing electric bass. It's like it's aerobic. It's like running a race. You need to warm up. You can't just go and pick up the bass and start going playing, because the technique is all about this, right? So you're doing this a bunch, and you may be on stage for, I don't know, maybe an hour, maybe 90 minutes of this. So if you're going to be doing this, you have to start you have to be aware of that. You have to do your stretches, man. You have to look, I'm a big old boy, right? But I'll try and be as limber. Just, crick, crack. I try and be as limber as I possibly can. Do your thing. Make sure everything is nice and loose. Now, look, this is going to look really dumb, but I learned this from the Stanislavski method of acting. And the thing is that you just turn into a rag doll. You just kind of jump up and down, and just let your body loosen up. You just kind of turn into a rag doll. Your whole body's nice and relaxed. You know what I mean? You feel it all the way down to your fingers and your toes, and you're just, you know what I mean? You're just releasing all of this tension out of your body, so that when you get up to the instrument, you're nice and relaxed, right? You got your breathing together. I mean, this is work. This is a lot of work. Frankly, even if I'm not playing slap bass, I do this. And when I'm backstage, I'll be doing this for, 10 minutes at least. I make people leave the backstage, so I've got all the room to do this. And then, because it's our hands, remember how I told you I had that terrible thing with my ligaments? With your hands, you definitely want to stretch, because you want all of those tendons to be nice and stretched and loose, because we're going to be going this direction for a while. For every bit of this that we're going to do, we need to have a lot of this going on. Right? Following along, guys? Okay. And something I do when I come over to the bass is that in between songs even, I kind of put my hand like this. You know what I mean? Kind of use that. By the way, Santiago Jimenez is Bajo Sexto player, a guy named Jesse Castillo. He told me that he was going to retire soon because his hands hurt him so bad. And then I noticed that his hands had curled like this. And I actually knew a bass player. He played with the Cajun band called I'm going to forget their name. But he was a bass player, and his hands had completely knurled because they had never once warmed up before a gig. Now with Jesse Castillo, I got him to start doing that, and I taught him to do this in between songs, and he went back to playing. He went back to he played all the way up to the day he died, some 15 years later. So it's really super crucial and important that you be nice and limber. Further, when you approach the instrument, you need to make sure that it's nice and stable, and that your posture is in a way where you're not hunching over it like this. Because when you're hunching over it like this, you've got your back, your hips, all of this stuff is out of alignment. As much as you can, you'll notice when I play the slap technique, I'm not playing it like I would when I'm playing jazz. That's a different technique altogether. When I'm playing the slap, I've got it tacked up against my body. My chi is all centered. I'm good to go. Everything is nice and relaxed. Et voila. Try your best to, look, I'm 54 years old. I would like to continue to play, I think I got a good another 20 years in me, I feel. And the way that you can do that and play all the way into old age is if you approach it seriously.
Well, I completely agree with you. That's kind of the thing that, also Ryan and Kevin both mentioned, like, how important it is to be relaxed. Um, Another thing that I would like to ask you is that how did you develop your own style? Because your style is different than all the guys that you mentioned that were your heroes, so your influences. So you sound different. How did you did you
Thank you.
develop your own style?
Well, that's quite a compliment, man. I really appreciate
Well,
it.
that's why I invited you here. That's what I always appreciated the most.
Well,
Whatever music I'm listening to, is it jazz or punk or rock and roll or classical, is the individuality. If there's something special that grabs me, if there's nothing special, I'm kind of losing interest. Life is too short, like um to spend it listening,
mhm.
mediocre, doing anything mediocre. So,
Yeah, it's funny. There's a local band, and I played on their record. They do kind of Romani swing,
oh,
and I kind of did my thing on their record. They were young and they couldn't say no, if you know what I mean. And I did my thing on their record, and then afterwards they were like, oh, "What was he doing?" Because they're used to playing things real straight.
uh-huh.
But I kind of did my thing on it. And the thing is that now their record gets played in rotation at a local club. And the deal is that a lot of musicians play there, and a lot of musicians go there. And every time their record comes up, all the other musicians perk up and go, "Who's that band?" And they get all these compliments for their record now. You know what I mean?
That's
And it's
great.
one of those like, "I told you so." Like you have to. There's so much of the same thing happening over and over again. There
Oh
need
yeah,
there
absolutely.
needs to be some kind of, when you're making a recording and you're adding something to the world, you need to add something of yourself. There needs to be something new, something different. And I think I never set out to create my own style, if that makes sense. Once again, an old man told me this. They said, when you're young, you're going to play every style you can find. You're going to study this style, you're going to study that style, and you're going to study and master all of these styles. And then at some point along in the game, you're just going to play them all together at the same time. So,
I completely agree with you. Like that's kind of like what happened to me, because when I was a kid, I was playing rock and roll in rock and roll bands. I was playing, in Balkan Romani style bands, and then at the same time I was studying jazz, and I was going to the music conservatory studying classical music, and I played in a symphony orchestra.
right.
And I remember one thing, like studying music theory, it was just literally studying three completely different subjects. Like a music theory in jazz was even just a simple circle of fifths was like, like with classical, it's you use encarmoni, but you have to say it's a C flat and not B if you're modulating in a certain way. And with jazz, they were kind of like, no, this is the same note, that's all it matters, so it's just you can use whatever,
Yeah.
if it's C or C flat, or if it's C flat or B, say whatever you want, whatever it's easier to read, because it's the same note, it doesn't matter, which makes the most sense. And then with with when I was playing with people that were more into Balkan and like real traditional music, they were like, "Oh no, circle of fifths, it's more like a spiral because
Yeah.
when you're going up, B is a little higher than a C flat when you're going down, because C flat leads to whatever,
Mhm.
A. I'm now confused. A sharp, but it's so when you're going down, that same note would be a little lower than if it's going up. So it was just like, oh my god, I just want to play music. And then all these little things you had to pay attention. And then at one point it clicked, I kind of connected, you know like all that theory that was in my head, was like my brain wanted to explode,
Mhm.
just studying uh, like triton substitution, which kind of doesn't exist in classical music, but but Phrygian chord exists, which is basically the same thing. It's stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it took me a bit, and then I think um, knowing all those theories helped,
Hmm.
but it was also kind of confusing.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Um,
Well,
Another thing,
You talked about Balkan, brother. You want to move forward?
yes, but before we do that,
Yeah.
I want to ask you about a function of slap bass in the music styles that you play the most. How is that a groove, or it's what I don't want to put my words into your mouth, like, so you tell me, how would you
I,
describe?
I think what it does for me, well, I think it's been 30 years without a drummer. That's what I tell people. 30 years without having to work with a damn drummer. Um, I'm the rhythm section. That's how I look at it. That I've been able to, on the bass, provide the role of bass and percussion and be really interesting and be able to hold interest and also get people on the dance floor. You know what I mean? Does that does that answer your question?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, everything answers my question. Your answers are excellent. So
I mean, I tell people literally, you know, here in New Orleans, that has value because there's the bands, a lot of bands don't use drums, and I call it I call it moving the boat. You know what I mean? I'm that Evan Root engine on the back of the boat. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna, you know, like I'm gonna move this thing through the water. You know what I mean? Like I'm boom, tick, boom, tick, boom,
got
tick,
it.
boom, tick, boom, tick, boom, tick, boom. The other guys go boom, 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 boom. They rely on some other guy to go for them. But I'm moving that thing. I'm moving that thing down the road, and I use and the thing is that I'm using the things that I've learned in bluegrass to move forward, and the things I've learned in lautari, like the serba, you know what I mean, to move things forward. But I'm also using what I learned in black music, to create the groove when it's necessary. You know what I mean? So it really it's like you say, my style. It's an amalgam of all those things. You know, learning to play in seven. You know what I mean?
Well,
Play,
that's in my DNA. I didn't
yeah,
have to learn that.
playing slap bass
That's
in
my
five.
pocket.
Look, man, playing slap bass in five. You know what I mean? Like that's when I play a joke, when I play a Jewish joke,
Yep.
like the hora mare. You know what I mean? I think five when I'm playing that. That's in
You
three
told me
eight.
that. Yeah, you
Yeah,
told me
it's in
that.
3/8, but I play it in five. But that's from a lifetime of traveling and listening, and I mean you're the same way. You know what I mean? You encounter something, and then you go, I need to know everything about it. You know what I mean? And then that becomes a file, and that file goes here, and then
Yeah.
when it
And then
needs
20 years go by. I'm like, oh yeah, I learned this. Yes, good.
crank, crank, and then it goes poof. You know what I mean? It comes out of the fingers. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
I, I think that's it, man. That's
Yeah,
that's
I agree with it. So that was always my thing, like learning and incorporating different styles, always respecting the original style that you're playing, but like putting things like from kind of outside of the box.
yeah.
I was recently found out one solo that I played on a with my band Tiger Army, and it was like, I started kind of like psychobilly, crazy, simple punk style, and then I went to kind of Turchesca groove, and then it was like completely Balkan, like Romani scales and type of thing. And I, I I enjoyed listening to it, and I think that the audience also enjoyed because it's something different,
Different.
but it still respects the style. Nobody would say like, "Oh, you're not really doing what you're supposed to." No, I'm doing it, but I'm adding, little spices here and there that kind of like makes that soup a little tastier.
Yeah, man. A little bit of
Uh,
something.
exactly. Let's talk about Romani music and Lautari. That's what you wanted. That's
Well, let's move on.
let's
Let's move
move
on
on,
to my
correct?
life in klezmer music, man, because that's
Oh, Klezmer. All right, let's do that.
it's been a chunk. Yeah. Um, I when Bad Livers was kind of stopped playing, and Danny wanted to go out and kind of do his own thing, and he was working with guys like John Hartford, and he had real opportunities to go and do that, and I did not have those kind of opportunities myself. I had a little klezmer band that I was working with in Austin, and I was going to this event called Klez Camp, where I was a teacher there. I taught bass and tuba. There's not a lot of bass in Jewish music, as it turns out. Jews couldn't really afford those sorts of things in Eastern Europe, but there is like a bass concept, and there's not a whole lot of slap bass in it. Our neighbors there in Eastern Europe used it a lot. Because I know the technique, I have kind of introduced it a little bit into some of our dance styles. There are a lot of dance styles in Jewish music which aren't necessarily quote unquote Jewish. They come from the co-regional. And so I'll play you a couple versions of that. I'll play along with a recording that's really, really well known. It's called Haitarama. And I guess I should mention that I'm also known as a tuba player. So they would hire me to play tuba half the time and then bass half the time. This is a really good example of I get hired on the gig. You want to talk about how do you get the gig? Well, know a lot of different instruments. You'll get hired before somebody else. You may not be the best bass player or the best tuba player, but you do play both. So you'll get a leg up. And because I was once again, how did I get these klezmer gigs and then end up touring for almost a decade? I played all over Europe and Eastern Europe, touring with all kind of great musicians. How did I get that gig? I went to Klez Camp every year, and I met all of the cats, and I had my chops up, and I had a good attitude, and I knew all of the material. They didn't have to teach me any material. I knew everything. So that's how I got all those gigs. Let me play along with this tune called Haitarama. It's kind of a little showpiece. This is from a record that I just released yesterday, which you can find on my Bandcamp. so on and so on.
That's awesome. What is the name of that tune?
It's called Die Heiser in Yiddish, but we know it's from it's a Circassian tune from the Caucasus Plains called Haiterama.
Huh, okay.
Haiterama. Let me show you two other little things, two other little dance styles. There's a thing called a Turkisher, which is what Jews think Turks dance like. It's actually a Greek beat. And so it's kind of like, that's kind of the beat. That's called a Turkisher. And then another beat, which is called a hora, not like an Egyptian hora, which is an Israeli. Well, that's a slip. The Israeli hora is like a round dance, but the Jewish hora, also called a joc or a hora mare in Romanian, is a 3/8 beat, and it's like that. And I kind of think of it in 5 because I'm going. I don't have a version to play with you. Kind of like that. Dun, 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 dun. So that's a couple examples of where I have snuck slap bass playing into the Jewish world. No one.
And it fits great. And it fits great. I want to mention also the soundtrack for the movie Golem that you did that has plenty of slap bass, right?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
I remember that you gave me that DVD like I don't know.
It is hard
10
to
years
find.
ago?
It is hard to find. I will find some way to make that available.
You guys, if you just joined us, like make sure to click on these links below. I put all Mark's social media, his website, and his Instagram, Facebook, and the Bandcamp. That's where you can get his music. My links are also below. You can follow me on Instagram, check out my website, Facebook, TikTok. I'm doing that a little bit. They like just the slap bass Sundays on it. Twitter and all of that. And Art of Slap Bass is below. And if you feel like helping us out, there's a couple donation links. PayPal, Venmo, and Patreon is here.
Do it.
Patreon really works well, so please check that one out because you can get some cool perks from me as well.
Do it.
And actually, I wanted to answer on one question that I just forgot. Someone asked me. Okay, I had to do this first. Sorry, I'm here like a production guy as well. Tom asked me, Djordje, could you post YouTube video links to some of these tunes and styles that you guys are talking about on your new YouTube channel? All right, Tom, that's a good question. But I won't. The reason why I'm not going to do that is because I'm trying to have all original content on my YouTube channel because I don't want to have any strikes, and that's how YouTube calls when they punish you.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to have just my original stuff so that I can YouTube doesn't post ads or stuff like that, or just like delete eventually my channel. So I don't want to risk it, so I'm not going to do that. But what I'm doing actually on Patreon, the link that I mentioned, after each episode, I still haven't done that because I'm not sure if you guys are interested or not in that. But I'm gonna do um, I'm gonna write down the summary of each episode with YouTube links and with the spelling of everything that we are talking about. And I plan to do that for each episode. So whoever is interested, check out the Patreon. As soon as I see, so far I got like every other tier somebody is supporting, but not on that one. And that one takes lots of time. So if I don't see anyone being interested in that tier, I'm just gonna delete uh, that perk. So basically, Tom, if you're interested in that, check out Patreon and become a Patreon, and then that way I'm gonna be writing down a summary of each episode. So that's that. If you guys, we are close to wrap up. So if you guys have any questions, now's the time. I also would like to see where are you watching us? Is it only the States? Well, I'm currently in Croatia, and it's 10:39, so it's 20 minutes before 11, and it's completely dark. I'm in a balcony. I'm in a balcony. There's mosquitoes around me. I'm drinking Cosmopolitan. So cheers. And but I'm almost done with it. And so yeah, so now's the time to ask questions. If you have any questions, make
I want to
sure
make a
to,
shout out.
to do that.
I, I want to say hello to Mr. Leo Pausch, who made me this amazingly beautiful string winder. Can you believe this? He makes these
Oh, wow.
hand spun string winders, and he sent me this. And this has saved my life when I make my strings. So, Mr. Leo Pausch, thank you so much for
That's for
this.
the bass, right?
Yeah, this is for string bass. Look at this. He made it.
Cool.
Yeah,
So
hand turned, beautiful hard rock
awesome.
maple. I think he sells these on his site. But man, he made this and sent this to me recently, and I have to thank him so much for making that. Leo Pausch.
So
Well,
please,
yeah.
when we're done with this, send me the link to his website so I can, post it in on the
And
Patreon
I
so
know
people can
I know you were
check it out.
talking about the Eminence not working for you when you were in Europe, and I think I know why. Because when you slap on them, they have that high thing and they wobble. But you know what I did was since I invented the thing, is do you see what I had attached on the end here? I had them
Uh-huh.
put I had them put this sleeve on it. You can pop this on or off. This is a sleeve that you put on the end pin, and it stabilizes it so that when you slap on the thing doesn't move around. So when I'm on the road, I can hit it as hard as I want. It doesn't move at all. So anybody who's got one of these Eminence basses and they're having some difficulty with it when they're slapping on it, just get a hold of them and they will send you one of those. If I'm not mistaken, they'll just send you one free of charge because when you most guys who play them are playing bluegrass and country and they don't hit them so hard, but when you hit them, they kind of wobble a little bit. So we designed a little sleeve for it that you stick the end pin in and tighten the end of it, and boy, it just stays stable as a rock.
And so you designed that bass completely, or like
No,
with
no, no.
them, or like what was the thing?
Well, I found when I was on tour with Don Walzer, I found one of the original basses for sale uh, in Phoenix, and I paid $3,600 cash for it. And I played it, and I loved it because I thought this is a great way for Bad Livers to tour. I can get a hard case for it and check it, and because my other bass had just been torn up. I had a David Gage hard case for it, and even then it got broke over and over again. And I was done with it. And so I played that bass, and it sounded amazing plugged in. And I took it with me, and I'd go to Bluegrass festivals, and they just look at me terrible, and they go, "You can't use that. We just use microphones here." And I said, "Fine, just put a microphone on it," and it sounded great, just even with a microphone. So it was just like, okay. But the thing was, is it was still too big. It was still too long, and I wanted to put it in a golf bag carrier. So there was a banjo maker in the same town that the bass maker was, in Minneapolis. And the banjo maker had designed a genius way of taking necks on and off of his banjos. So you could buy one of his banjos and put different necks on, like a 4-string neck or 5-string neck, whatever you wanted. And I looked at the way the neck went in and I go, "That's genius, man. I bet you can put that on the bass." Right? So I got the two guys together, and they came up with the idea, and I said, "I'll pay for it. I know it's expensive." This is when Bad Livers was making real money. I said, "I'll pay for it." I paid a tremendous amount of money. I don't even want to tell you how much it was, but I paid for its development. So I came up with the idea of the detachable neck, and then I paid for its development. So it's my idea, and I paid for it. So that's as much as I had to do with it. Now everybody made fun of me, and nobody used them. But then Marshall Wellborn saw it, and he said, "I like that." And the moment that Marshall Wellborn started using it, everybody thought it was okay. I had been at Bluegrass festivals for 3 years, taking crap like you wouldn't believe. People gave me such crap because I'm a big boy and it's skinny. They would make fun of me. They'd make fun of me. They gave me such crap, but it sounded great. Couldn't say anything about it, and put a mic on it. I don't care. And everybody gave me crap. Then Marshall shows up, and he's the greatest that ever was, Marshall shows up, and then all of a sudden it's great. And so all the tour, not all of them, but lots and lots of tour bands in Bluegrass use them now. So there it is, the Eminence bass. I've actually had the fingerboard cut down. You can't see it, but the fingerboard is actually cut at the end of the body, and I can take the end of the fingerboard off. So the neck, the fingerboard, they all fit in a bag the size of the body. So it's even smaller. I can probably get it with the bag. I can get it in the overhead.
But you have four strings on it, right?
Yeah, I got 4 on that. I wouldn't mind a 4-string bass.
What's going on with that extra string?
I don't play it, but you know what I use it for? A G.
Oh, okay.
I use it for a G.
Yeah,
maybe an F. Maybe an F. Not really. Maybe a G. Maybe a G. I'm gonna be frank with you, George. If somebody watching this said, I wouldn't mind that fella having my bass. Like if there's a company that like wanted to like put a bass in my hands, I would not be adverse.
All right.
I don't have a 4-string bass. I wouldn't mind having one.
So all of you there watching, probably after we stop live streaming, get a hold of Mark. Links are below under these 2 bases.
If folks want to see me play after all this mess is done,
Oh yeah.
my group Bad Livers have some dates booked. We have some festival dates booked. We were supposed to be playing at the John Hartford Memorial Festival. We were supposed to be playing at the Watermelon Park Festival. I mean, the Strawberry Park Festival. We had other things lined up.
The strawberry in California?
No. It's called the Strawberry Park. It's in
Okay.
it's in Virginia, I think.
Okay.
A big festival, and we had other things lined up. We had those two booked. We had other things lined up, and it was just going to be me and Danny, banjo and bass, and then this all happened, and then I play string bass here in New Orleans, 3-4 times a week, playing plenty of slap. I mean, everybody has to solo, and that's how I solo. And I have. You've seen I've posted a couple videos of my solos on my YouTube channel. So if folks went to my YouTube channel, they'd catch a couple of my solos that I've documented on there, just for giggles, so they can kind of see what I'm up to these days.
One thing that I forgot to mention before when we were talking about Klezmer and Jewish music in general,
Mm-hmm.
the first song that I forgot the name, it kind of reminded me a little bit of the style of playing, reminded me on the Tartar Tanz that you recorded with your band, with the Rubin Chicks Yiddish ensemble.
Well, that's what that is. That's what you heard.
That's the same thing?
Yeah, that's the same thing.
Oh, but you gave me
Tartar
the
Tanz.
different. You say you wrote. You told me different titles. No?
We found out what the real name was.
Ah, okay. So I just know the old title.
Yeah, we found out what the real name is. 20 years later, we find out what the real name is.
Oh, okay. So it is. So I'm not crazy. Okay.
You're not crazy.
I was like, hey, this reminds me on the Tartar Tanz, and I have to ask you about it. And then we started talking about something else.
Tartars from Circassia.
Okay, but I remember that it was in 3. So and then you played all these little figures. They kind of like sounded cool for me.
It's kind of 3.
Yeah, I mean, well,
Dun.
it's also the way you feel it. But if you want to teach someone, you would write it down in 3. You would not write it in 5.
Right.
But it's I'm getting attacked by mosquitoes here. But it's everything for slap.
Everything for
exactly.
Do we have more questions Do we have more questions on YouTube? Anybody?
Let me see. Oh, all right. Steve Martin said, thanks from Newcastle, UK. I watched the band busking in Rome earlier this year, pre-COVID. The bass had 3 strings on a 4-string bass. Mind blown. Cheers.
Yeah.
Actually, in Italy, you can find lots of Romani bass players, and lots of people play in this particular style. It's very interesting. You can find Romani bass players from Romania, and most of the people that play this style come from Romania, and they're all Romani. But lots of them migrated to Italy or Spain, and you can find lots of them. And actually, I actually traveled Italy once, and I was trying to find like where the guys that are doing it, and I found quite a few guys. The problem is they usually don't speak English, and I don't speak any Italian. I do speak French, so that's the way I was communicating with Vlad Viorel and Tarev the Heduks guys, but it was hard. So I would like to feature some of those guys, but I am not really sure how to do that. I might need a translator or something. Another thing that I wanted to ask you. So now I'm remembering, like at the end, remembering. But you have few more minutes, right? You're not in a rush. I wanted to ask you about. I remember you were telling me that you played with Reverend Horton Heat, right?
Yeah, I played one gig with Reverend Horton Heat, but I played electric bass.
And was that the band was Reverend Horton Heat, or was Jim Heat his project before the Reverend, or what
it was Reverend Horton Heat when he was an R&B band.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was he was strictly R&B at the time, and okay. he had a bassist named Smilin' Jack Barton.
Okay.
And Smilin' Jack was the guy who went with me to go pick up that $75 bass.
Ah, okay,
And
that's cool.
he
Uh,
was a bass luthier, and he set my bass up to play. He,
okay.
he was the guy who got me started in that respect.
So what? So you were subbing for him?
Yeah, what happened was is that uh, Jack and Jack and Jim were having a bit of a fight, and
Oh,
Jack got sick, and Jim had this "the show must go on" thing. You know what I mean? Like,
huh?
no one's too sick to come out and play. But Jack was sick. I mean, he was really sick. So he said, "Well, I can get any bass player." You know what I mean? So he called me up, but I wasn't really good enough on upright yet to
Ah,
to come out and play upright. So he said, "It's okay. Bring your electric." And so I said, "Fine." And so I came down and played. It was great fun. I had already played with him before um, on a gig, like a cover band gig that we had done for money, like kind of like a honky tonk gig. So I played once with him before, so he knew I could play. And it was at a place called the Profit Bar. I've got pictures of the gig of me playing, not with him, but I've got pictures of me playing. And yeah, he and I lived in the same apartment block. He lived downstairs from me.
in
So
Dallas?
in Dallas, yeah.
Okay.
So we knew each other. We hung out.
So
Yeah.
that
So
was so that was 80s or early 90s? When was that?
mid '80s, '85.
Mid 80s. Oh, really? Oh, wow. Long time ago.
Yeah,
So
'85.
was that you also told me that you seen the Stray Cats like in 82, 83 or something?
It was in Norman, Oklahoma. Hang on. I have the tour pin. I have the tour pin here for Iggy Pop. Okay. This is the
Okay.
Iggy Pop tour pin, right? Because they opened up for him. And I don't know
Oh,
if,
the Stray Cats opened up for Iggy Pop?
yeah. And yeah. So it's 1983. The badge says 1983.
Okay.
So, yeah. So I still have the pin. Um,
So
it was
were they an influence to you at all? Like I never got that. Like you were never really into rockabilly, right?
rock and roll.
Yeah, but not rockabilly, right?
The
Oh, you were.
revival passed me by, man. The revival
Okay.
passed me by, man. Um,
Okay.
uh, I, I, I saw them as showmen. I thought they put on a show. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? I thought but like, I had some gay friends who were really into rockabilly. They were super into it because they could dress up.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? They could coif their hair and they could dress up. And so this is going to sound weird to you, but I always associated rockabilly music with gay culture
Hmm.
um, because of that. Um, uh, and hey, man, High Noon. I never associated High Noon with rockabilly.
Oh, okay.
I just considered them to be a roots, like a roots rock and roll band.
Hmm.
And that's how, look, those guys, they didn't listen to rockabilly records. They listened to country records and they listened
Hmm.
to jazz records. They listened to a lot of black music. They listened to Duke Ellington and they listened to Son House. You know what I mean? They didn't listen to God bless him. I mean, they didn't listen to Big Sandy. I love Big Sandy. You know what I mean? But like, they didn't listen to contemporary. They didn't listen to their contemporaries, and I think though I think those guys loved Stray Cats, and I think they loved those rockabilly bands. I don't think they listened to them. I think they
Hmm.
listened to the bands that the original quote unquote rock and roll bands listened to. So that's how
And
I thought. That's
yeah,
how I
and
thought.
what was the so was like Lee Rocker and the Stray Cats that concert was it kind of an influence to you like as far as slap bass goes?
Nope.
Not really. Okay.
No, I didn't really know what I was seeing.
Okay.
It was,
So
you
you
know what I
came
mean?
like to see Iggy Pop.
Who was
Oh,
amazing. Yeah. But what I saw was a guy like laying on his bass and playing and standing on his bass and the drummer and like they had these wild pompadours and they were a show. They put on a
yeah.
hell of a show and they were great musicians. Great musicians. They put on a hell of a show. You know, I can't say that their records ever did anything for me, and they weren't no, they really weren't an influence for me. I know
All right.
we've talked about this. However, I will allow, and you know that we agree about this, that Lee Rocker is a super super important figure for slap bass. I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
I'm gonna say that it's just it not for me.
Um, well, I know
Willie
what is.
Dixon, Willie
Yeah,
Dixon.
yeah. I know what it is for you, and that's something that you turned me on, and that's very important for slap as well, which is old calypso and roaring lion and Wilmot Houdini. I believe that you mentioned that as well in um, essential slap bass riffs.
Yeah.
Um, and you turned me on into that. I was mind blown. Now that some of that stuff is it's crazy. If you guys are not familiar with this, there's a great compilation called "How Low Can You Go," and they feature some of this stuff. It's amazing. It's just like some of the best music you'll ever hear.
Yep.
Um, um, so since we're talking about essential that article, like how would you? I'm not sure like who's seen it, who haven't seen it. Like what would be your choice now, or the most essential
Oh,
uh, slap based recordings? Uh, like
oh man, you've
the
you've
moment.
caught me with my pants down, man. Man, in the I can't do it. I can't pull it out.
Okay,
So,
all
yeah,
right.
so, there's so much has gone on. I mean, I just think about the players I know.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I think.
Well, I also think about the players I know. All of you guys that I'm featuring right now
I mean,
are the players I know.
we've talked about Twerk Thompson. You know what I mean? I think for New Orleans playing, um, he's my favorite. I mean, um, we're here in New Orleans, and if you're going to play black music in New Orleans, I don't think there's anybody else doing it as straightforward and meat and potatoes as that cat. I think Ryan Gould is an amazing performer. I really like him. Um, I always loved the R&B groove of Thomas Yearsley. I've always tried to. I think that guy has always had like the super groove. Um, and as far as an all-around cowboy goes, it's Kevin Smith. What can I tell you? Jimmy Sutton. Jimmy Sutton's always been an inspiration to me. You know what I mean? So these are all cats that I know. I think my contemporaries and the younger musicians that I hear are the guys that I really respect. Um, there was a recording that I heard that I was like, wow, that kind of sounds like the way I play. There's a old recording by a guy named David Cross, I think is his name, and I'll look it up again. But like, I stumble across recordings every now and again, and I hear something, but I don't really make note of them these days because um, at my age now, I'm not really in the listening phase of music. I'm in the making phase of music. If that makes sense to you,
Absolutely.
like there was a period of my time, which, like I said before, there's a period of your time where you listen and you learn and you take everything in, and then you process it and then you put it out. And I really think, people talk about a midlife crisis. I think um, I was told I was told that there's a Jewish tradition that at the age of 50, you're supposed to, if you're an adult male who has no children, like me, you kind of need to find something valuable to do because you didn't make kids. and that's one of the commandments, you know, is to be fruitful and multiply, and you haven't done that. So you have to do something. So I kind of devoted myself at that moment to do things that other people can't do. And one of those things is be a professional musician and make music. You know, other people who have kids, they've got to take care of those kids. They've got to have a day job that pays money. They got to put them through college. They got to do all these things. Well, I don't have to do all those things. I can take risks. I can take the risk of going and being a professional musician. It's kind of a bad risk right now, given the fact that you know, I can't ply my trade, and I'm going to have to find something else to do real quick. Yeah. But because of that, at age 50, you know, about 3 years ago, I kind of stopped listening to music. I know that sounds weird, but I kind of stopped, and then I allowed the music that's in my own head to kind of gestate, and now I'm kind of putting it out. That's kind of where I'm at now. I'm kind of decided to put stuff out.
So that album that you just put out, is that the Jew of Oklahoma?
Yeah, I put a solo record out about 3 years ago, and it's just me and one instrument, not a bass. It's like a folk singer record. You know what I mean? For years, I backed up other people, and so I just decided to do that myself. I have an idea, though. I have an idea. It's a lot of people have been asking me to do this, where I just cut a record of just me playing the bass. Where if I come up with a song or whatever, just back myself up, sing the song, and just playing the bass. And so I'm just kind of like a raw record. It'll be a heck of a challenge to see if that's interesting or not. So I'm kind of
playing bass for a longer period of time solo. It's always challenging. It's great, but it's challenging.
Or I'm thinking about doing a duet record, which is probably a better idea, and then just getting into a studio situation with just one person that I know real well, and then just going in and like not overthinking it, and just expressing our, just having a moment to express our relationship musically, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
You know, and I've never done anything like that, and you know, it's obvious that I probably should do it.
Let me see if I have any of these mandatory questions left that I have to ask, that I always ask. We pretty much went through your gear. Are there any amps that you do?
I don't use amplification.
Okay. And what pickups? Which pickups are you using?
Well, I don't use a pickup per se. Stefan Schertler from the Schertler Company, who I met.
It's a magnetic pickup, right?
No, it's a sound pressure pickup.
Okay.
Are you familiar with those? It's the end.
I don't think so.
It's the he gave me one, so I guess I'm an endorser in that respect. I am endorsing this product. However, I must say, it is the finest way to amplify an instrument I've ever encountered. It essentially takes the top of your instrument and makes it a condenser microphone. It's not good for situations which are super loud, like with a drummer, but I don't use one. I mean, in the old days, I used to take like a realist for the bridge, and then take a microphone and type like a little lavalier microphone and tape it under the fingerboard, and then have a little dual mixer, and then be able to go the boom and the whack and have all that. But with this pickup, it's sensitive enough to get the total sound of the instrument, and it's through the board. It just sounds amazing. It just sounds amazing. And instead of if the sound man doesn't like the sound, if he thinks it's too tinny, I can literally pick the microphone up off the top of the instrument and move it.
No, okay.
You know what I mean? And so when I get to the gig, I get there a little bit earlier with the sound man, and then I just kind of move it around until I get a good sound. Because every place is different. There's not like a sweet spot on the top of the instrument, because every room is different. And every sound man I've ever worked with says it's the best bass sound they've ever worked with. So It's
Well,
not a cheap pickup, but it's the
I
Endine.
bet.
It's the Shirtler Endine pickup, and I've literally I have been using this one pickup, since 1999.
Oh wow. Okay.
And
Wow.
so
Well, it lasts for 2 decades. At least that.
so if you and I didn't, realists don't.
I was never into realist. That was, I'm usually in a loud kind of situations, and then it never worked out. It always feedbacks, and I'm really happy with my blast call pickup.
Cool. Well, there's so many options today. There's
Yeah,
so
there
many,
are
and
lots of
for
options these days, which is
right.
great.
If I had to use if I mean literally if I have to use an amp, I have like an Ampeg 10 watt, the smallest little Ampeg amplifier that's made. It's just like a little box this big. You know what I mean?
Okay. Well, that's cool.
I use that for my electric.
All right. Okay. How would you compare? I know that you've been in New Orleans for 6 years, 7 years now.
7 years now.
How would you compare music scene and just life in New Orleans to Austin?
Well, the life that I knew in Austin doesn't exist anymore. Um, the people that were my audience there got gentrified out, and the people who took their place do not even like live music. So um, it was untenable. The rent went way up and the pay went way down, and it's not coming back. So couldn't live there. Whereas I moved here. Now, in the 7 years that I've lived here, the rent has gone up quite a bit. I mean, it's gone back up to the same price it was in Austin.
Oh, okay.
However, there's money here. There is a cultural expectation that people will be playing a certain kind of music here. So if you play that certain kind of music, like you don't. Here's the deal. In Austin, I would be in a band, and people would go, "Please come see my band. Oh, can I get people to come? Please come see my band." Whereas here, I'll get a phone call, and they'll go, "Rubin, we need a bass player at 2 o'clock. Can you get down here?" You know what I mean? Like, it's the law of supply and demand. You know what I mean? Like, I'll
All right.
literally get a phone call, like, because somebody double booked, right? And there'll
Yeah.
be days where I will have my string bass and my electric bass and my tuba stashed, and I will go play 4 hours Cajun music with my electric bass. I will walk 6 blocks down the street and play 3 hours traditional black music, right, with my upright. And then I will take a cab, like a 6-minute ride down to Frenchman Street, and stash both of those upstairs, grab my tuba, and play 4 hours at that place.
Oh
And,
man,
and
you
that's
gotta love New Orleans.
that's a Saturday.
Okay.
Okay. That's during season. So if you have the skills, right? How do you get a gig? Be able to play all that. Like, know all the Cajun material. Know all of it. So when the guy turns around and says Lacasine Special Key of C, you know it. So when you're playing with the band playing traditional New Orleans music, and they say Riverboat Shuffle, you know it, right? And when you go down and play the tuba with Panorama Jazz Band, and they say play, oh my God, what's that tune? There's that Serbian tune we play. You know what I mean? Like we play Serbian music.
Oh yeah, all right.
So know all of that and play all of that, right? Know the material, be available. Like when I play with the Cajun, hey, I've got clothes. I have a tie. I have a shirt and tie packed in. You know what I mean? Like wear the right clothes. Show up on time. know all the material, be ready to go.
Exactly. Those are the advices. That's what I wanted to hear from you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly, man. I love. Do you play much on Frenchman Street?
Well, I did when I first got here. I did. I played quite a bit. I played with younger bands because when you're starting out, you kind of to show your face, you kind of do that. I don't.
Like a Spotted Cat, or is that thing
That's
still
one of.
going on?
I didn't play there so much. I played down the street. I played quite a lot of the different clubs there. I played Spotted Cat with a group called the Panorama Jazz Band, and I play either tuba or tenor banjo with that band, whichever they need.
You did Mardi Gras, right?
I always play Mardi Gras
with them, right?
Yeah, but you know what? Now that I'm in my 50s, I've graduated to being the Grand Marshal. Do you know what that means?
No.
It's a beautiful thing. When you get to a certain age and you've been in a band for a long time, and you want to retire, but you still want to be in the parade, they make you the Grand Marshal.
Okay.
And what you do is you get to walk out in front of the band with a sash, with like this beautiful sash, and you wear a suit, and you like strut and dance with big
that's cool.
And you're wearing white gloves. You have your hat, and you tip your hat to people, and you kind of strut and you kind of dance. Oh, come on! How could that not be the greatest thing ever for your buddy Mark? Yeah. Can you imagine me? Let me show you. Hold on. Yeah. This is the old sash. This is the old one. So I don't have the new one. The new one's better, right? So I've got a suit on, and I get to dance with the band. Pretty happening, huh?
That's awesome.
Yes, it's all sparkly. The new one's something else. I'll send you a picture of the new one.
Please do.
I get to wear a fez.
Post it on one of your, on Instagram or Facebook so people can see it as well.
Yeah.
If you joined us later, all the links are below. Check out Mark's website, drewofoklahoma.com, and markrubin.com, and Mark's Instagram and Facebook as well.
Yeah, there's lots of pictures of the Grand Marshal on my Instagram.
All right.
Yeah.
Go below. Is there like anything that I missed? Like, is there anything else that you want to talk about? Like, did we touch base on everything we wanted to, or?
Well, I made a list and we hit everything on the list, my brother.
Is there anything else that you wanted to play, or?
I think we got everything covered. I am going to give you a lesson coming up when you come back.
Yes, please do. I want a lesson from Mark Rubin.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do that when I come back to the States. That also depends on this COVID-19 situation. So
I'll tell you this. Let me share this with folks. I'll share this with folks. If they'd like a lesson, I am available. Like I said too. I mean, look, people are more available than you think they are. You know what I mean? Nice guys are nice guys. And a lot of people got to the top of the heap not by being a jerk, but by being a decent person. So if there's somebody that if there's someone you'd like to have a question with or maybe catch a lesson with, just reach out. Just reach out. I mean, and during this COVID time right here, a lot of us have got a lot of free time. And some of us need to earn an extra income.
So what's the best way to get in touch with you?
You can just hit me on the Instagram. That's easy.
Okay.
That's easy as heck.
So you heard it. Cool, man. I think I asked you that. Is there anything else you want to mention? Should we wrap it up? This is definitely the longest live stream.
You know what I want? I'll tell you what I want. This is what I want. This is what I want to tell people right now. Tell you this. I'm gonna tell everybody this. Croatia, Serbia, every place. You hear me? This is what I want to tell folks right here. If we want to have live music again, if we all want to be able to get together again and see some live music, we're all going to have to put up with this for a while. You know what I'm saying? So let's all be cool and do this. What do you say? So
Absolutely agree.
that's my last bit of information for you.
Absolutely agree. And I hope, Mark, that I'm gonna be seeing you soon without a mask, and I'm gonna see you traveling and touring, and then I'm gonna start traveling and touring and coming to New Orleans and hang out with you again. And well, you discovered Daisy Dukes for me. Like that's the first time I went and had that crawfish in New Orleans. That was with you in 3 in the morning or something after my gig or your gig, whatever, a few years ago. Oh
They
man,
they
I'd love to come
counted
back to
upon.
New Orleans.
They can be counted upon. Next time you come, I know the manager there, and he'll whip us up some of his mother's recipe of onion rings.
Oh
He'll,
wow! All right,
he'll do that for us special.
all right, I'm down. Cool, man. Thanks, Mark. Thanks a lot. Hope to see you soon.
You too, my brother.
Hope this mess gonna be over soon, or at least controlled soon. So please be smart. So I will stay and give a little outro, but I'm saying bye to you. Thanks a lot for everything. We all learned a lot, and uh, what can I say? Can't wait to see you again.
If we
And
don't see him,
I'm waiting for that Bad Livers record. Please
well,
stop.
it'll happen. You know, and here's the deal. I want everybody to stay safe because we want to talk to you, not about you. And look, if we don't see you in the future, we'll see you in the pasture. Bye bye there, brother.
All right. That was Mark Rubin. That was a wonderful episode. It's like 3 hours and 20 minutes long. I mean, what can I say? And you're here, and I want to thank you all. I want to especially thank our new Patreons. I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate the donations. The links for donations are down below: Venmo, PayPal, and Patreon, as I mentioned, the most important one. So please check it out. There's a really cool perks um, that I put down. And if you have any suggestions, what should I put in Patreon? Please, how can you tell me? You can write down the comment under the video instead of the live chat, because probably not going to be able to see live chat after we're done streaming, live streaming. So if you have any idea what should I do that for the Patreon, please do that. Please write it down under the video, and also write down who should I feature next. I have a list of about 40 people that I want to interview for this, but I want to hear your opinion as well. So please write down under the video and check it out. Before I forget and before I finish, I want to give um, huge shout out for these slaptastic graphics that my friend and also bass player, slap bass player Fernando Slap from Argentina did, and he's the one that's been responsible for our slap bass graphics. He did that cool intro on the regular episodes and for the live stream and all the photos and everything. That's Fernando. He's amazing. He plays in the band Monorama as well. They have a new album. Check it out. Um, I believe that's pretty much it. Um, I still owe you that Slap Bass Sunday video. I still didn't, I filmed one or two extra, and I plan to put it out. Um, didn't have a chance to edit them, so I'll do that soon. In the meantime, check out Slap Day Sundays. Like it's like if you're watching this on my YouTube, and you do probably, there's a playlist on my channel that's called Slap Day Sunday. It's pretty cool. I put lots of effort into that. It's like short videos, hopefully sweet videos, and but they took kind of a lot of time to do them. Like not playing, but like everything else around it was kind of like a pain in the butt. But I'm glad I did it. But you should check it out. Check them out. And as I mentioned, donations, Venmo, PayPal, Patreon, and that's it. Thank you all, and don't forget, never fret. Slide it in smooth and keep it in the groove. This is Djordje, your friendly neighborhood bullfiddle cat, and I'll see you next Saturday. Ciao.